Chapter 2028. Jiang Haotian. With an angry roar, Cheng-Li rushed down from the heaven stairway with a fierce aura. Qin Dage, be careful. Fire Lotus quickly stood in front of Qin Feiyang. From Cheng-Li's posture, he would definitely attack as soon as he came down. Although Cheng-Li was only an outer sect elder, his strength was not bad. Once he attacked, Qin Feiyang's purple-gold dragon blood would definitely be exposed. Ah! But Fire Lotus's action made Qin Feiyang a little stunned. She actually stood in front of him to protect him without hesitation? Good girl, she has a conscience. Girl, get out of the way. You are not his opponent. Qin Feiyang stretched out his hand and gently pushed Fire Lotus to the side, then took a step forward and protected Fire Lotus behind him. Fire Lotus was taken aback, then looked at Qin Feiyang's back with a happy smile in her eyes. It was so good to have such a big brother. At this time, Cheng-Li had already rushed down, raised his arm and slapped towards Qin Feiyang. There was no mercy. The wind from the palm was as deafening as thunder. Disciple greets elder. Qin Feiyang bowed. On the surface, it was a salute, but in fact, it was to avoid the slap. Cheng-Li's slap missed, and he was a little angry. Qin Feiyang secretly said, "Elder, don't go too far. You and Feng Wenhai's tricks can be hidden from others, but not from me." Cheng-Li was surprised. Qin Feiyang raised his head and looked at Cheng-Li with a smile. "Elder, if you really want to fight, then I will tell Madman the truth." "I don't understand what you are talking about." Cheng-Li snorted. "It doesn't matter if you don't understand. You just need to know that if Madman knows, you will use his hand to get rid of me. I think with Madman's temper, he will not let this go," Qin Feiyang secretly said. Cheng-Li's pupils contracted. Qin Feiyang secretly laughed. "So before we meet, we should be more amiable. After all, it's just a small matter. There's no need to be so stiff, right?" "Small matter." Cheng-Li secretly sneered and said, "I'll let you be proud for now. In any case, you'll be crying later." "That's not necessarily true. Perhaps you will be able to enjoy a good show today," Qin Feiyang said. "What do you mean?" Cheng-Li frowned. Qin Feiyang shrugged and transmitted his voice. "I don't know what it means. I'm just talking nonsense." "You?" Cheng-Li was instantly enraged. He felt as if he had been played like a monkey. Whoosh! At this moment, the law enforcers and disciples had finally arrived. There were more than 10 law enforcement officers. Every single one of them exuded an aura that surpassed that of the battle god as they surrounded Qin Feiyang and Fire Lotus. As for the disciples, they were all crowded at the top of the heaven stairway, looking down at Qin Feiyang and Fire Lotus as they gesticulated and discussed. "Get lost!" Suddenly, a cold shout rang out like thunder, causing the disciples' faces to turn pale and the blood in their bodies to surge. They quickly turned their heads and saw a woman in purple walking over step by step, exuding a bone-piercing cold aura. It was Shangguan Fenglan. Seeing this, the pupils of the disciples shrank as they hurriedly retreated to the side. Shangguan Fenglan passed through the crowd and walked down the stairway to heaven step by step. She swept her gaze over Qin Feiyang and Qin Feiyang. Even Qin Feiyang didn't dare to look straight at her gaze that was as sharp as a knife. Fire Lotus stood behind Qin Feiyang and did not even dare to breathe loudly. "Why are there only the two of you? Where are Xueqi and Jiang Rushuang?" Shangguan Fenglan stopped in the middle of the heaven stairway and looked at Qin Feiyang. "Sorry, I'm late." "Speak of the devil." Xueqi appeared at the top of the mountain, but he was holding a wine jar in his hand and his whole body reeked of alcohol. "He's still drinking at this time? What does this guy mean? Is he looking down on us?" The law enforcement officers stared at Xueqi angrily. Qin Feiyang and Fire Lotus also looked at each other. Drinking early in the morning? What was this bastard doing? The corners of Shangguan Fenglan's mouth kept twitching. In order to find them, she had been running around for the past few days and was almost exhausted. But what about these people? Not only were they all flushed, but there was even one who ran over drunk. Could it be that these few days, they had been looking for pleasure and romance? What a comfortable life. Yes. She felt very unbalanced in her heart now. Xueqi held the wine jar and staggered to Qin Feiyang and Fire Lotus. He stuffed the wine jar directly into Qin Feiyang's hands and said while shaking his head, Jiang. Brother Jiang, come, this is for you. Even his words were a little stuttering. Qin Feiyong looked at the wine jar and asked puzzledly, what do you mean? Look at today, we are not afraid of death, not afraid of power, and return to the Nine Heavens Palace. What an amazing feat this is. So this wine must be drunk. Xueqi waved his hand and roared righteously. Not afraid of death? Not afraid of power? The disciples above burst into an uproar. It was obvious that he had made a mistake. But now he was speaking righteously and saying that he was not afraid of power? Just how shameless was he? Qin Feiyong looked at Xueqi meaningfully, then glanced at the ashen-faced Shangguan Fenglan and the others, and laughed. This wine must be drunk. After saying that, he held the wine jar, raised his head, and crazily poured it into his mouth. Not long after, a large jar of wine was drunk by him without a drop left. Crack. Following that, he smashed the wine jar and shouted, Let's go, we're going to die. What an honor it is to be able to die with Brother Jiang. Xueqi roared and followed Qin Feiyong up the sky stairway. Fire Lotus looked at the two and couldn't help but shake her head and laugh. Then she followed the two and walked up the sky stairway. These two are really crazy. Understand, after all, they are going to die soon. It's a pity that they have soul stones. Last time when they fought with Xueqi, they won a lot. Everyone's face was full of schadenfreude. When Qin Feiyong and the other two walked to Shangguan Fenglan's side, Shangguan Fenglan suddenly raised her eyebrows and secretly said, What are you doing? Going to die. Xueqi grinned, shook his head and sighed, and said disappointedly, It's a pity that in the end, I didn't get the heart of the beauty, otherwise I can die without regrets. Shangguan Fenglan's face darkened. Others may not understand this sentence, but she clearly knew what it meant. Let's go. Back to the conference hall. Shangguan Fenglan looked at the law enforcers and shouted. It's clearly in front of me within reach, but it's so far away. Why is the heavens so cruel to me? I just want to get pure love. Is it so difficult? Just as Shangguan Fenglan turned around, Xueqi stretched out his hand again, looked at the sky, and cried out sadly. Shangguan Fenglan was expressionless, but her slender fingers could not help but clench tightly. Fire Lotus glanced at Shangguan Fenglan and said with a smile, Big brother Xueqi, are you officially confessing? Yes, I am confessing. But the distance between me and her is like this sky stairway. I'm at the bottom, and she's at the top. It's unreachable. Xueqi sighed. He did not transmit his voice, but it fell clearly into Shangguan Fenglan's ears. Shangguan Fenglan's veins twitched violently. She could not help but turn around and kick Xueqi. Xueqi immediately rolled down like a rubber ball. He fell until his nose was bruised and his eyes were swollen, and he wailed again and again. This, what's going on? This sudden scene made everyone dumbfounded. However, after Xueqi got up, he looked at the angry Shangguan Fenglan with a silly smile on his face. Something's wrong. This guy seemed to be confessing to our law enforcement hall master before. Fuck! An outer disciple confessed to the law enforcement hall master? This is simply unheard of. Awesome! Not to mention anything else. Just this, he is worthy of being the idol of us men. The disciples above all secretly gave Xueqi a thumbs up. This courage was worthy of praise. Shangguan Fenglan was about to go berserk. She raised her head and glared at those disciples. When the group of disciples saw this, they immediately dispersed. Big news! Big news! That outer disciple Xueqi actually confessed to the law enforcement hall master. No way! How is this possible? It's true. You didn't see how crazy he was just now. Amazing. Admirable. Our hall master is a publicly recognized goddess. As the saying goes, good news does not go out, but bad news travels 1,000 miles. Soon, this matter caused an uproar in the Nine Heavens Palace, and everyone knew about it. This made Shangguan Fenglan almost explode with anger. Although her status was high, she could not shut the mouths of the disciples below. Along the way, Shangguan Fenglan's face was gloomy. On the other hand, although Xueqi had a black nose and purple eyes, his face was beaming with joy. Qin Feiyong helplessly shook his head and said, Brother Hua, I finally understand why you drank so early in the morning. You are using the alcohol to burn your boats. A man must dare to do and fight, otherwise, he will only be a bachelor for the rest of his life. Xueqi straightened his back and laughed proudly. You are not daring to do and fight. You are courting death. Qin Feiyong rolled his eyes. What about you? How confident are you this time? Xueqi transmitted his voice. 100% confident. Qin Feiyong said confidently. Haha. Then I will wait and watch the show. Xueqi laughed secretly. Qin Feiyong raised the corner of his mouth, looked at Shangguan Fenglan in front of him, and said, Lord Hallmaster, we are not going to the conference hall. Do you have the right to choose where you want to go? Shangguan Fenglan shouted without turning her head. We have made such a big mistake, so naturally we have to be interrogated and judged in public. If you go to the conference hall, what if someone says that you are practicing favoritism? Wouldn't that ruin your reputation? Qin Feiyong said. And Shangguan Fenglan frowned and transmitted her voice. What are you doing? I can't say. Qin Feiyong smiled mysteriously. Shangguan Fenglan looked deeply at Qin Feiyong and said in a deep voice, Then where do you think you should be judged? I think it should be the battlefield. The square there is quite big, and it is between the outer and inner door. Disciples from both sides can be present. Qin Feiyong smiled. Chapter 2029. Okay, as you wish. After Shangguan Fenglan finished speaking, she looked at the law enforcers and ordered, One of you go and inform the Great Elder to publicly judge Zhang Haotian and the others on the battlefield. Yes. One of them immediately sped up and flew away like lightning. Qin Feiyong looked at the man's back and said loudly, Remember, let them all be present. Shut up. Shangguan Fenglan snorted and said angrily, You're getting more and more presumptuous. You're just an outer disciple. What qualifications do you have to let everyone be present? Xueqi also looked at Qin Feiyong with dissatisfaction and said, Lord Templemaster is right. Brother Jiang, you're taking yourself too seriously. This is not good. The corner of Qin Feiyong's mouth twitched. He started to help Shangguan Fenglan? Sure enough, he was beastly and inhumane. Soon, a group of people arrived at the square. At this moment, the square was already full of people. Even outside the square, there was a sea of people. Because when Shangguan Fenglan asked the law enforcer to inform the Great Elder, the inner and outer disciples had already rushed here in advance. Seeing the arrival of Qin Feiyong's group, the disciples on the square also tactfully retreated and made an open space in the center of the square. Chengli waved his hand, and a few mahogany chairs appeared on the ground. Then he looked at Shangguan Fenglan and smiled. Lord Templemaster, please sit. Shangguan Fenglan nodded and sat on one of the chairs. Xueqi also ran over and sat next to Shangguan Fenglan. The whole place fell into a dead silence. Was there something wrong with this kid's head? What was the situation now? And he even ran to sit with the law enforcement hallmaster? The corner of Cheng Li's mouth twitched and he shouted, What are you doing? Is this a place where you can sit? Xueqi directly ignored him and looked at Shangguan Fenglan with a flattering smile. Lord Templemaster, since those big shots haven't arrived yet, let me sit and sober up. Get lost. Shangguan Fenglan slapped the armrest and shouted angrily. Okay. Don't be angry. It's not good for your body. Xueqi quickly got up, his face full of concern and his words full of ambiguity. When the surrounding disciples heard this, they immediately whispered to each other. The relationship between this person and the law enforcement hallmaster was really thought-provoking. Qin Feiyong and Fire Lotus stood aside obediently. Seeing Xueqi walking over, Fire Lotus transmitted a message to him. Big brother Xueqi, aren't you afraid that Shangguan Fenglan will hate you more and more? Sister, you don't understand. Deep hatred, deep love. In other words, the more she hates me, the more she will pay attention to me. Because I've already left my shadow in her heart. As time passes, this hatred will slowly turn into love. In short, this step is to make her remember me. Xueqi snickered. Fire Lotus was stunned. So there was a plan? Swish! At this moment, two figures descended above the square. One of them was the guardian who was ordered to inform the Great Elder. The other person was too familiar to Qin Feiyong and the others. It was Feng Wenhai. Fire Lotus frowned and said, "Only Feng Wenhai came? It seems that it's not easy to invite the big shots above to appear. But it's okay for the protagonist to appear," Qin Feiyong secretly said. "Protagonist?" Fire Lotus was slightly stunned and secretly laughed. "It seems that you're the protagonist today. I don't dare to compete with Feng Wenhai for this glory." Qin Feiyong smiled. Feng Wenhai sneered at Qin Feiyong and the other two, then cupped his hands to Shangguan Fenglan and said, "Greetings, Hall Master." "Sit." Shangguan Fenglan nodded. "This?" Feng Wenhai looked at the empty seats next to him, looking a little timid. "Sit when I tell you to," Shangguan Fenglan said impatiently. Now she was very uncomfortable in her heart. And all of this was caused by Xueqi. "Okay." Feng Wenhai quickly responded and sat next to Shangguan Fenglan. Shangguan Fenglan said, "Qingli, put away the other chairs." "Yes." But just as Changli stepped forward and was about to put away the chairs, a young man in black suddenly rushed over like lightning and sat directly on the chair to Shangguan Fenglan's left. Changli was originally going to reprimand him, but when he saw the black-clothed young man's appearance, he suddenly felt awkward. Feng Wenhai, who was sitting on Shangguan Fenglan's right, raised his eyebrows and said angrily, "Lunatic, what are you doing?" "What does it matter? It's empty anyway." Lunatic picked his ear and said with an indifferent smile, "You have no respect for the law and have no respect for your elders." Feng Wenhai was furious and shouted, then looked at Shangguan Fenglan and said, "Hall Master." Shangguan Fenglan glanced at Lunatic and waved at Feng Wenhai. "It's fine." Feng Wenhai's face suddenly turned pale. Even Feng Wenhai was defeated, so Chengli naturally did not dare to say anything. He put away the other chairs and then retreated to the side. Madman glanced at Qin Feiyong, then turned to look at Feng Wenhai. He grinned and said, "Elder Feng, don't just stand there. Begin the interrogation. Could it be that you want the Hall Master to personally interrogate him? What kind of disciples are these? Each one is more outrageous than the last. When I become the Hall Master of the Law Enforcement Hall in the future, the first thing I'll do will be these people." Feng Wenhai snorted inwardly. If Qin Feiyong and the other two knew about this, they would definitely burst out laughing on the spot. He was about to die and still wanted to be the Hall Master of the Law Enforcement Hall? He was too naive. Feng Wenhai took a deep breath and looked at Shangguan Fenglan. "Hall Master, this is already a matter of conclusive evidence. Do we still need to interrogate them? Then what do you think?" Shangguan Fenglan asked. "Just kill them and punish them," Feng Wenhai said without any hesitation. A cold light flashed in Fire Lotus's eyes as she thought, "He really can't wait. If it were me, I would do the same to avoid any changes," Qin Feiyong said. Shangguan Fenglan heard this and looked at Qin Feiyong and the other two. Killing intent flashed in her eyes and she was about to give the order. But at this moment, Madman picked his nose and said, "Elder Feng, since there's conclusive evidence, there's no need to be so anxious." Feng Wenhai was annoyed. He suddenly stood up and stared at Lunatic. "Pay attention to your identity. You are just a disciple. You have no right to interfere in these matters." Lunatic said unhappily, "A disciple is also a human. Can't he express his opinion?" More and more presumptuous. Feng Wenhai was so angry that his nose was crooked. Lunatic contradicted him time and time again. With so many disciples watching, wasn't it obvious that he was embarrassing him? "Don't be angry. What I mean is, since they will die sooner or later, let them say their last words before they die. This will also show the kindness and magnanimity of our Nine Heavens Palace," Lunatic said. "Lunatic, you also know what kindness and magnanimity are?" Feng Wenhai seemed to have heard the biggest joke in the world. Lunatic said unhappily, "I'm not happy with you saying this. I'm saying this for the good of Nine Heavens Palace." "So what if you're not happy?" Feng Wenhai said angrily. "So what? If I'm not happy, you as an elder of the Law Enforcement Hall won't have a good time either." Madman chuckled. "Presumptuous. Hall Master, are you going to let him continue to be so rampant?" Feng Wenhai was so angry that his face and neck turned red. "Don't be angry. Don't be angry. It's bad for your body." Lunatic quickly comforted him. Scram. Feng Wenhai pushed Lunatic away and said, "Hall Master, Please immediately give the order to execute the 3 of them. Lunatic returned to his chair and said with a smile, Elder Feng is so anxious. Could it be that you've done something wrong? You! Feng Wenhai exploded. At the same time an angry shout sounded. Lunatic, don't be so presumptuous in front of my father. Feng Zihan walked out of the crowd and glared at Lunatic with a cold expression. Lunatic frowned. Stinking woman, this has nothing to do with you. Move aside. The one who should move aside is you. The hall master and the elders are sentencing Zhang Haotian and the others. Why are you joining in the fun? Feng Zihan said gloomily. I'm happy, what can you do? Lunatic curled his lips. Feng Zihan stared at Lunatic, clenching his fists, his eyes spitting fire. What's going on? Aren't they going to publicly sentence Zhang Haotian and the others? Why are they quarreling first? The surrounding disciples looked at each other. Looking at the situation, it seemed like there was going to be a big fight. Lunatic, if you don't feel comfortable sitting there, then go stand at the back for this hall. Seeing Lunatic pestering here, Shangguan Fenglan was about to go crazy. Lunatic smiled embarrassedly and then became obedient. It seemed that this lawless person was also a little afraid of Shangguan Fenglan. In the past, when you slandered Nine Heavens Palace, this hall was already lenient. Why are you still doing this after becoming a disciple of Nine Heavens Palace? Has my Nine Heavens Palace wronged you? Shangguan Fenglan looked at Qin Feiyang and the other 2 and said angrily. No. Qin Feiyang shook his head. Then why? Shangguan Fenglan shouted. Qin Feiyang said, we admit that slandering Nine Heavens Palace did happen. Now you admit it yourself. This is too much. Lord Hallmaster, this kind of scum, don't tolerate it, quickly kill them. The surrounding disciples roared angrily. Feng Wenhai also sneered. You may have misunderstood. What I said was that slandering Nine Heavens Palace did happen. After all, this matter has already been made known to the entire northern region. But I didn't say that we were the ones slandering Nine Heavens Palace. Qin Feiyang smiled. Still quibbling? Really stubborn. Hallmaster, this kind of stubborn person, there's no need to talk nonsense anymore. Feng Wenhai said. Feng Wenhai, don't be so anxious. If this show doesn't end, it won't be interesting. Qin Feiyang laughed. Feng Wenhai was surprised. Shangguan Fenglan also raised her eyebrows. There was a hidden meaning in his words. Wait a minute. These people had already escaped, but now they took the initiative to come back? Such an abnormal action. Could it be? Thinking of this, a light flashed in the depths of Shangguan Fenglan's eyes. Chapter 2030. There's a show to watch? Frenzy looked at Qin Feiyang impatiently and laughed. I love watching shows the most. Zhang Haotian, hurry up and let me see how exciting it is. I promise I won't let senior brother down. Qin Feiyang smiled. When the madman heard this, he calmly sat on the chair with a face full of anticipation. Qin Feiyang looked at Shangguan Fenglan and Feng Wenhai, then looked at the crowd and smiled. There are actually many flaws in the matter of slandering Nine Heavens Palace. Flaws? Everyone was suspicious. Qin Feiyang said, I believe everyone here knows that before I entered Nine Heavens Palace, they were already slandering Nine Heavens Palace. We know about this. And you also took the initiative to admit your mistake on the mountain peak. Someone said. Yes. At that time, it was all thanks to the law enforcement hallmaster's mercy. Not only did he spare my life, but he also let me enter Nine Heavens Palace and become a member. I want to ask everyone, if it was you, would you continue to slander Nine Heavens Palace? Qin Feiyang asked. We can't even thank him enough. How could we slander Nine Heavens Palace? Someone casually said. Yes. I, Zhang Haotian, am not stupid. Why would I slander Nine Heavens Palace? Isn't that just looking for trouble for myself? Qin Feiyang smiled. Someone else said, but the evidence of you slandering Nine Heavens Palace is conclusive. Evidence? Qin Feiyang laughed and asked, then I want to ask, where is the evidence you're talking about? This. The disciples were speechless for a moment, because they had only heard about this matter and didn't see any evidence. Zhang Haotian, what do you mean? This matter was personally investigated by the Great Elder. How could it be false? Feng Wenhai saw that the situation was not good and hurriedly shouted. The Great Elder is a person of virtue and prestige. If he personally sent someone to investigate, then it must be true. It's impossible that the Great Elder would deliberately frame an outer disciple like you. You don't have the qualifications. Everyone followed suit. I'm not qualified. This matter was indeed investigated by the Great Elder. But where is the witness? Although I have just entered the Nine Heavens Palace and haven't met the Great Elder yet, I can imagine that his strength must be heaven-defying. May I ask everyone, with his methods, could it be that he couldn't catch my accomplice? Qin Feiyong said lightly. That's true. People murmured. Zhang Haotian, things have already come to this point, yet you're still quibbling. What's the point? What you should do now is to take the initiative to admit your mistakes and turn over a new leaf. Perhaps we will give you another chance. And if you continue to deny it in every possible way, only death awaits you. Feng Wenhai shouted. Don't get too worked up. Qin Feiyong smiled faintly, then looked at the crowd and said, Do you want to know the reason? Everyone nodded. That's because even the Great Elder was unable to capture my so-called accomplices. Because these people have already been silenced. Qin Feiyong said. Yes, you're the one who silenced them. You're really vicious, not even letting your accomplice go. For someone like you, is there anything you can't do? Feng Wenhai sneered. Qin Feiyong couldn't help but laugh. What a good trick. But that's how it should be. The more this person made a scene, the more miserable his end would be later. Shangguan Fenglan, who had been silent all this time, glanced at Feng Wenhai, then looked at Qin Feiyong expressionlessly and said, From what you're saying, you seem to have been framed? Temple Lord is wise. Qin Feiyong cupped his hands and smiled. Nonsense. Temple Lord, don't be fooled by him. Feng Wenhai suddenly shouted. I have my own ideas. Shangguan Fenglan waved her hand at Feng Wenhai and said, Then tell me, who framed you, and what evidence do you have to prove it? Before I present the evidence. At this point, Qin Feiyong looked at the sky and said fearlessly, This disciple boldly makes a request to the Great Elder. He knew. The Great Elder and a group of big shots must be watching at the conference hall now. Impudent. Impudent. How dare you make a request to the Great Elder? You're simply arrogant to the extreme. Feng Wenhai roared angrily and charged toward Qin Feiyong. In fact, he was a little guilty. Because he was really afraid that Qin Feiyong had unfavorable evidence in his hands. How dare you? And just as Feng Wenhai charged toward Qin Feiyong, Fire Lotus once again blocked in front of Qin Feiyong, her eyes flashing with a piercing cold light. Qin Feiyong was stunned. This was already the second time. After successfully transcending the tribulation, this girl had become bolder. But in the face of Fire Lotus's scolding, Feng Wenhai turned a deaf ear. Qin Feiyong hurriedly pushed Fire Lotus away and said angrily, Girl, what are you doing? Fire Lotus wanted to say something. Feng Wenhai, stop. But suddenly, a hoarse voice sounded in the sky. The voice was very calm, and even had a trace of kindness. But upon hearing this voice, Feng Wenhai's face instantly changed, and he immediately stopped. The others also looked at the sky. There was no one in the sky. Only that hoarse voice echoed. Whose voice is that? Someone asked in a low voice. Nonsense. Of course it's the Great Elder of our Nine Heavens Palace. Hall masters like Feng Yuan rarely showed themselves in public, let alone the First Elder, one of the strongest figures in the Nine Heavens Palace. So many disciples only knew of his existence, but had never seen him in person. For many people, this was the first time they had heard the Great Elder's voice. Qin Feiyong was one of them. This terrifying existence's voice was actually so calm, without even the pressure of a superior. This was somewhat beyond his expectations. Great Elder, what are you doing? Feng Wenhai looked at the sky and asked suspiciously. Our Nine Heavens Palace has always been impartial. Yes, we kill good people, but we also don't let bad people go. Since Zhang Haotian claims to be wronged, then we naturally have to give him a chance to clear his name. Zhang Haotian, what is your request? The Great Elder's voice reverberated in the sky. Great Elder, this child is treacherous and cunning, don't you know? He definitely wants to play some tricks. Moreover, he's just an outer disciple. How can he make such a request in public? Feng Wenhai said angrily. The great elder said, outer disciples are also human, and humans should be respected, don't you think so? Yes, yes, yes. Whatever you say is right. Feng Wenhai nodded helplessly. The great elder said, Zhang Haotian, speak. Qin Feiyang cupped his hands and said, after the truth comes to light, this disciple hopes that the great elder can deal with it impartially and kill the person who framed this disciple on the spot. Zhang Haotian, don't talk nonsense. The first elder has always been fair and impartial. You're doubting his character by saying that. Shangguan Fenglan scolded. This disciple knows his mistake. Qin Feiyang quickly apologized. It's fine. Don't worry, this old man will deal with it impartially. The great elder said. Thank you, great elder. Qin Feiyang bowed gratefully, then looked at the crowd and said, actually, from the beginning, we were wronged. Wronged? Then why did you admit it at the sky stairway? Everyone was suspicious. I had to admit it. Because if I didn't admit it, then I wouldn't be able to enter the Nine Heavens Palace, and I wouldn't even be able to keep my life. Qin Feiyang sighed. No way. Who has the ability to stop you from entering the Nine Heavens Palace? Everyone was surprised. Of course, it's also someone from the Nine Heavens Palace, and this person's status in the Nine Heavens Palace isn't low. Qin Feiyang said, then looked at Feng Wenhai and smiled. Elder Feng, don't you think so? And why is he looking at Elder Feng? Could it be? Everyone's heart trembled. Feng Wenhai's eyelids twitched, and he said angrily, is there something wrong with your head? Why are you asking me about this kind of thing? I'm just asking, don't be nervous. Qin Feiyang laughed. How am I nervous? Don't be so sarcastic with me. Feng Wenhai shouted angrily. If Shangguan Fenglan wasn't present, he would have killed him immediately. Okay. Let's not talk about it anymore. I believe that everyone is already impatient to see what's going on. Now, I'll take out the evidence to prove my innocence. After Qin Feiyang finished speaking, he took out an image crystal. And everyone looked at the image crystal suspiciously. As for Feng Wenhai, he became even more nervous. His hands retracted into his sleeves and tightly clenched together. Everyone, please take a look. Qin Feiyang waved his hand, and the image crystal shone brightly. Following that, an image quickly unfolded in the sky above the square. In the image, there were two middle-aged men sitting in a small tavern, drinking while wantonly slandering Nine Heavens Palace. What? Why would he have such an impression? Feng Wenhai was shocked. His hands were clenched so tightly that they turned white. At the same time, conference hall. Feng Yuan also stared at the image, his eyes filled with disbelief. Soon, the image ended. Zhang Haotian, this image doesn't seem to be able to prove anything, right? Yeah. They don't have the symbol of our Nine Heavens Palace on them, and they didn't reveal their identity. They didn't even mention the person behind them. This doesn't seem to have anything to do with our Nine Heavens Palace. Maybe, this was deliberately arranged by you. Deliberately creating such an image to confuse us. However, the disciples in the square frowned. I deliberately arranged it? Qin Feiyang was slightly taken aback and asked doubtfully. There are so many of you but no one knows the two of them. One had to know. Although the two of them weren't wearing the uniform of Nine Heavens Palace, they were still from the law enforcement hall. There should be people who knew them. Hearing this, many people shook their heads, indicating that they didn't know them. Brother Jiang, there are many people in the law enforcement hall. Usually, if there's nothing important, they won't easily show themselves. So it's normal that the disciples below don't know them. Hua Yi transmitted his voice. Qin Feiyang nodded, then looked at Feng Wenhai and Shangguan Fenglan, and said with a smile, the disciples don't know, but the two of you as the hall master and elder of the law enforcement hall, should be familiar with these two. 2 chapters today. The second chapter will be released at around 10 o'clock. Chapter 2031. I have no impression. Shangguan Fenglan shook her head. Ah! Qin Feiyang was stunned. The dignified hall master of the law enforcement hall actually had no impression of the law enforcers below? What a joke! Hua Yi secretly said. It's not her fault. What do you know? Qin Feiyong glanced at Xueqi. I may not know about other people, but I know almost everything about her. Xueqi secretly laughed. You're really obsessed. Qin Feiyong rolled his eyes. He didn't need to think to know that this guy must have already investigated Shangguan Fenglan thoroughly. How can this be called being obsessed? I'm doing this for my lifelong happiness in the future. Forget it. You won't understand even if I tell you. I won't talk nonsense with you. Actually, you really can't blame Shangguan Fenglan for this matter because she rarely interferes with the law enforcement hall's affairs. It's usually Feng Wenhai who handles it. For example, when the law enforcement hall recruits, Feng Wenhai at most just reports to Shangguan Fenglan. So she, as the hallmaster, is not familiar with the people below. Xueqi transmitted his voice. Qin Feiyong was speechless. To put it nicely, she's careless. To put it bluntly, she's neglecting her duties and not doing her job. I understand. After all, she's a woman. She definitely doesn't like to show her face outside. Xueqi said. You're starting to speak for her? Sure enough, she's a person who values her lover over her friends. Qin Feiyong's face was full of disdain. Xueqi smiled embarrassedly. At this time, Feng Wenhai finally calmed down. He looked at Qin Feiyong and said indifferently, I also have no impression, and the hallmaster also has no impression. This means that there are no such two people in the law enforcement hall. Haha, Qin Feiyong laughed. When he heard Shangguan Fenglan say that she had no impression, he expected Feng Wenhai to say this. If this video is your so-called evidence, then you're treating all of us as fools. Jiang Haotian, do you know what kind of crime it is to deceive us and the Great Elder? Feng Wenhai shouted. Don't worry, Qin Feiyong said with a smile. Feng Wenhai raised his eyebrows. What the hell is Brother Jiang doing? Gongzi Feng and Gao Xiaolong stood in the crowd, keeping a low profile. Both of them looked at Qin Feiyong suspiciously. This person never fights a battle that he is not confident in. He must be hiding something. Mu Tianyang, Mu Qing, and Xueqi were also in the crowd. Shangguan Fenglan raised her eyebrows and said, Jiang Haotian, let me give you a warning. The First Elder is still watching in the Great Council Hall. Don't laugh around here. Understood. Qin Feiyong nodded. He looked at everyone and said, that was just the first video. Now, I will announce the second video. What? There's a second video? Before Feng Wenhai could breathe a sigh of relief, he became nervous again. As soon as he finished speaking, Qin Feiyong waved his hand, and an image appeared above the square again. It was the scene of the two burly men meeting Gu Yong and being silenced. Gu Yong! When he saw Gu Yong in the image, Feng Wenhai's eyes trembled. Inside the Great Council Hall, Feng Yuan also jumped to his feet. His eyes widened in anger, unable to believe what he was seeing. Feng Yuan, isn't that Gu Yong? I remember. He's one of your people. Why would he meet with Jiang Haotian's two accomplices? The other big shots retracted their gazes and looked at Feng Yuan suspiciously. I don't know. Feng Yuan panicked and quickly shook his head. In the second video, Gu Yong and the two burly men mentioned Feng Wenhai. When he saw this, the First Elder frowned and turned to look at Feng Yuan. His calm gaze carried a hint of sharpness. Feeling the First Elder's gaze, Feng Yuan's face tightened. He hurriedly said, First Elder, there's something fishy about this matter. Wenhai would never do such a thing. First Elder, please investigate. The First Elder fell silent and looked at the image again. Soon, the second video also ended. At this moment, whether it was the Great Council Hall or the image above the square, they were all fixed on the scene where Gu Yong silenced the two men. How could this be? Feng Wenhai muttered. Even the private meeting between Gu Yong and the two men was recorded? The square was dead silent at this moment. The one who framed Jiang Haotian and the others was actually Feng Wenhai. This was too crazy. No wonder Jiang Haotian said that if he didn't admit it, he wouldn't be able to enter the Nine Heavens Palace and wouldn't be able to keep his life. Elder Feng, what do you say now? Don't tell me you don't know this Gu Yong. Qin Feiyong waved his hand and the image in the air disappeared. He then looked at Feng Wenhai with a mocking gaze. Feng Wenhai's expression was incomparably flustered. Among the crowd, Gongzi Feng was also dumbfounded. He never thought that Qin Feiyong would have such irrefutable evidence in his hands. Amazing. Gao Xiaolong was also full of admiration. To have this kind of evidence, especially when the opponent was the enforcement hall's elder Feng Wenhai, was harder than ascending to the heavens. Feng Wenhai, what explanation do you have? Suddenly, a cold voice exploded. Shangguan Fenglan slammed her palm on the armrest. With a crack, the armrest shattered on the spot. This action gave everyone a fright. Feng Wenhai was so scared that he almost collapsed. Hallmaster, I'm innocent, I don't know about this. This must be Gu Yong impersonating my name and doing this in private. No, you let Gu Yong come out and confront him? Feng Wenhai cried out. But he was sneering in his heart. Gu Yong, oh Gu Yong, don't blame me. It was your own carelessness that allowed this little beast to catch you red-handed. Now, I can only let you be the scapegoat. Shangguan Fenglan said in a deep voice. Where is Gu Yong now? I don't know. Feng Wenhai shook his head. You don't know? Shangguan Fenglan was so angry that she laughed and shouted. He was also silenced by you. Plop. Feng Wenhai knelt on the ground and cried. Hallmaster, this matter really has nothing to do with me. Please investigate clearly. Nothing to do with it? The evidence you want, Jiang Haotian has already taken out, and now you're still quibbling. You really disappoint me. I gave you full authority to manage the law enforcement hall because I trusted you. And how did you repay me? Abuse of power, deceiving your superiors and concealing your subordinates. Do you know what kind of crime this is? Shangguan Fenglan shouted angrily. I'm innocent. Hallmaster, I'll go find Gu Yong immediately. I must confront him face to face. Feng Wenhai shouted. Lord Hallmaster, this matter may be as Elder Feng said, Gu Yong did this behind his back. Why don't we find Gu Yong first and confront him on the spot? Cheng Li, who was at the side, glanced at Feng Wenhai and carefully looked at Shangguan Fenglan. Yes, Hallmaster, this disciple knows father's character best. It's impossible for him to do such a thing. At this time, a woman in a light purple dress walked out of the crowd and looked at Shangguan Fenglan. That's right. This person was Feng Zihan. She had been in the crowd the whole time, so she had personally witnessed the situation turning around bit by bit. Seeing Qin Feiyong take out this evidence, she knew that today's matter would not be settled. She also knew that her father wanted Gu Yong to be the scapegoat. Shangguan Fenglan looked at Cheng Li and Feng Zihan, and said in a deep voice, Can you still find Gu Yong now? Lord Hallmaster, there's no need to think about it. We definitely can't find him. Qin Feiyong smiled. Shut up. Feng Zihan turned to look at Qin Feiyong with a hint of threat in her eyes. Qin Feiyong completely turned a blind eye. Feng Zihan retracted her gaze and looked at Shangguan Fenglan. Lord Hallmaster, since we can't find Gu Yong, we can't conclude that this is my father's doing. Shangguan Fenglan frowned. Qin Feiyong smiled playfully and asked, Fire Lotus, what did I say 2 days ago? Fire Lotus smiled and said, You said that just these 2 videos can't be used as ironclad evidence. Everyone looked at the 2 of them in unison. From what she said, could it be that there was still evidence? Feng Wenhai and Feng Zihan also hurriedly looked at Qin Feiyong. Seeing the smile in their eyes, they couldn't help but feel uneasy. Feng Zihan's eyes flashed, and she transmitted her voice. Jiang Haotian, where it's possible to let people off, one should forgive them. There was a hint of pleading in her tone. There was no other way. In this kind of situation, she could only put down her attitude. Otherwise, when Qin Feiyong took out evidence again, there would really be no end to today's matter. Where it's possible to let people off, one should forgive them. Qin Feiyong muttered and laughed secretly. Then I want to ask, why were you unwilling to let me off in the past? Feng Zihan was silent. Back then, I had a grudge with your brother Feng Zijuan. You should know very well that this was not my fault. He took the initiative to provoke me. I was just returning an eye for an eye. But what about you? Instead of educating him properly, you schemed to deal with me? Tell me, what is this? Qin Feiyong sneered. They are my family. I can't judge them, but I can give you compensation. Feng Zihan sighed and secretly said, Compensation? Qin Feiyong was taken aback. Now, you have proven your innocence. I believe that after this, the Great Elder will also let you enter the inner sect. Your future is limitless. So this matter should end here. It's good for you and for us. Feng Zihan transmitted her voice. So, you have already steeled your heart to let Gu Yong take the blame for this? Qin Feiyong secretly said. Everyone has their own value in existence. Of course, we will also take good care of his family. Feng Zihan said. You are really ruthless. Qin Feiyong sneered. I also don't want to do this, but things have already come to this, so I can only do this. As for your compensation, you, Xueqi, Jiang Rushuang, and Jiang Fire Lotus, 1 billion soul stones each. At the same time, 1 peak-level divine artifact and peak-level divine art each. Feng Zihan said. Damn. Even with Qin Feiyong's temperament, he was shocked. 1 billion soul stones each, that was a total of 4 billion. And there were also peak-level divine artifacts and divine arts. What a big deal. Who would be able to resist such temptation? Fire Lotus looked at Qin Feiyong in confusion and secretly said, Qin Dage, what's wrong? Don't disturb me first, I have to think about it. Qin Feiyong secretly said, then lowered his head and pondered. Chapter 2032. What are you thinking about? Fire Lotus didn't understand, but she didn't ask. Seeing Qin Feiyong remain silent, the others were also suspicious. 4 billion divine crystals. This amount of soul stones was enough for everyone around him to step into the half-step divine lord realm. It could even create a few beginner divine lords. As for the pinnacle grade deity arts and deity weapons, they could instantly increase their strength by several times. But after spending so much effort to get this evidence, he was unwilling to let Feng Wenhai go just like that. Moreover, leaving Feng Wenhai alive was also a disaster. On one side was a disaster, and on the other side was wealth. This made it difficult for Qin Feiyong to choose. Because what he lacked now was soul stones. And Feng Zihan was also smart. He just happened to grasp this need of his. You have to think carefully. Even if you kill my father today, it will be difficult for you to survive in the 9 Heavens Palace. After all, my grandfather is the Hall Master of the Resource Palace, and I am also the #1 on the Heaven list. My mother is also a law enforcement elder. You are a smart person. If you really want to fight to the death with us, the one who will suffer in the end will definitely be you. So using Gu Yong's death to end this matter is undoubtedly the best ending. And I promise that we will never find trouble with you again, and we can even be your backing. Feng Zihan transmitted. Fight to the death? Suffer. Backing? Qin Feiyong was stunned and secretly asked, Are you threatening me? No. This is not a threat, I am helping you make a choice. Feng Zihan replied. Haha. You've already said it like this, isn't it a threat? Actually, if you didn't say this, I might have considered letting your father go. But you are very insensible. What I hate the most is being threatened. Fight to the death, right? Okay, let's have some fun from now on. After Qin Feiyong finished speaking, he looked at Shangguan Fenglan and said, Lord Hallmaster, you definitely won't be able to find Gu Yong, but this disciple has a piece of evidence that can prove that Feng Wenhai is behind this. A faint smile flashed across Shangguan Fenglan's eyes as she asked, Really? Qin Feiyong nodded. Shangguan Fenglan said, Then take it out and let us see. Qin Feiyong activated the image crystal again. Feng Zihan's gaze trembled, and he secretly shouted, Zhang Haotian, don't be unable to tell good from bad. Don't scare me. I'm a coward. Qin Feiyong sneered inwardly. With a wave of his hand, an image immediately unfolded above the square. This video was the conversation between Gu Yong and Feng Wenhai. How could this be? Feng Wenhai's eyes trembled. Feng Zihan's face was also deathly pale. Gu Yong betrayed them? It really is Feng Wenhai. Oh my god. A dignified elder of the Law Enforcement Hall actually dares to frame a disciple of the Law Enforcement Hall. Where is the justice in this? Too much, too much. How could he do such a wicked thing? The square was silent for a moment, and then suddenly exploded. Everyone glared at Feng Wenhai, their faces filled with disgust. Not only did a dignified law enforcement elder of Nine Heavens Palace do such a despicable thing, he even pretended to uphold justice on behalf of the heavens. How disgusting. How pitiful. I haven't even entered Nine Heavens Palace, but I've already been framed by others and have to bear the infamy of slandering Nine Heavens Palace. Yeah. What's even more infuriating is that the person who framed him is a law enforcement elder of our Nine Heavens Palace. He's clearly breaking the law. Lord Hallmaster, justice is in everyone's heart. Please uphold justice for Zhang Haotian. That's right. He knew that he was framed, but he had no choice but to admit it. You can imagine how he felt at that time. Can someone with status do whatever they want? Don't tell me that people with no status and no family background can only be bullied. This isn't fair. The surrounding disciples roared. If it was just one person, they wouldn't dare to say anything because they were afraid of the Feng clan's revenge. But now, there were hundreds of thousands of people gathered here. What was there to be afraid of? Would the Feng clan dare to kill them all? Plop. Hearing everyone's roars, Feng Wenhai slowly collapsed to the ground. His face was filled with despair. Feng Zihan's heart was burning with anxiety as he watched this scene. His hatred towards Qin Feiyang also soared crazily. He killed Feng Wenhai in one move. Big Brother Zhang's methods are terrifying. Even if it's not enough, it's still very satisfying. Senior brother Gongzi Feng, don't you think so? Gao Xiaolong laughed inwardly. However, Gongzi Feng didn't reply to him. Gao Xiaolong turned to look at Gongzi Feng suspiciously. He discovered that Gongzi Feng seemed to have changed into a different person. A gloomy aura was emitted from his body. His expression was terrifyingly gloomy. His hands were tightly clenched together. And Gao Xiaolong was bewildered. Didn't this person hate Feng Wenhai? But why wasn't there any trace of happiness now? In the great meeting hall, Feng Yuan was also slumped in his chair. His mind was blank. The other leaders were also silent. No one would have thought that Qin Feiyang would actually take out such strong evidence. This time, Feng Wenhai had no way to defend himself. The first elder glanced at Feng Yuan and asked the crowd, "Everyone, let's talk. How should we deal with this matter?" The leaders hesitated. Their gazes shifted to Feng Yuan from time to time. What's wrong? You don't know what to say? That's not good. All of you are the leaders of my Nine Heavens Palace. If you don't even know your own opinion, what's the point of my Nine Heavens Palace raising you? The Great Elder looked at them with a smile. Hearing this and looking at the Great Elder's smile, the leaders couldn't help but feel a chill in their hearts. Great Elder, according to reason, this matter should be handled impartially. But Feng Yuan only has one son, Feng Wenhai. Wouldn't it be too cruel to kill him? That's right. Great Elder, Feng Yuan has been conscientious in the resource hall all these years. Even if he didn't make any contributions, he still worked hard. Do you have the heart to see him send off his son? Great Elder, in my opinion, this matter should be carefully considered. Several leaders spoke up. Clearly, they were pleading for Feng Wenhai. The Great Elder was stunned. From what you're saying that this matter is over. Of course not. After all, this matter has already caused public outrage. If we don't give an explanation, the disciples won't be convinced. The leaders hurriedly shook their heads. The Great Elder said with a smile, "So you know that this matter has already caused public outrage. This old man thought that you didn't know." Great Elder, please calm down. The leaders immediately stood up in fear. Am I angry? I don't think so. A dignified law enforcement elder putting down his status and pride to frame an outer disciple. How glorious is this? This old man's face is shining. This is also a joyous matter for our Nine Heavens Palace. Don't you think so? The Great Elder looked around and asked with a smile. Everyone lowered their heads. No one dared to say a word. Public outrage. The exposure of this matter will not only incur the wrath of the disciples but also the wrath of the entire northern region. Very promising, very good. Looks like our Nine Heavens Palace is going to make a name for ourselves. This old man suggests that we hold a big banquet in the next 3 days to celebrate with the heavens. What do you think? The Great Elder asked. Great Elder, please calm down. How about we remove Feng Wenhai from his position and expel him from Nine Heavens Palace? The group of giants was already panicking to the extreme. This was because they knew the old man in front of them too well. At this moment, he was at his most dangerous. Expel him from Nine Heavens Palace. The great elder chuckled and turned to Feng Yuan. Feng Yuan, what do you think? Feng Yuan shivered and hurriedly got to his knees, begging, Great elder, please show mercy to Feng Yuan Hai on account of all the things I've done for Nine Heavens Palace over the years. The great elder said, So you don't agree with removing him from his position and expelling him from Nine Heavens Palace? I agree. This is what he deserves. I only ask that the great elder doesn't kill him and let him live. Feng Yuan nodded repeatedly. He knew that although the great elder asked this on the surface, the great elder already had the intention to kill him. If this old man gives him a way out, who will give our Nine Heavens Palace a way out? How will the world talk about our Nine Heavens Palace in the future? Come, tell this old man. As the hall master of the resource hall, you must have thought of this. The great elder chuckled. I didn't teach my son well and caused Nine Heavens Palace's reputation to fall to the ground. I'm guilty, Feng Yuan howled bitterly. The great elder asked, If you didn't teach him well, why did you give birth to him? I'm sorry. Feng Yuan kowtowed repeatedly, his face filled with pain. His forehead hit the ground, causing his skin to split open. The great elder chuckled. Oh right, Feng Yuan, this matter shouldn't have anything to do with you, right? No. Absolutely not. Feng Yuan almost jumped up and hurriedly waved his hands at the great elder. It's been hard on you. Although the one who made a mistake this time is Feng Yuan Hai, as his father, you'll definitely be cursed by others. My illustrious reputation has been destroyed just like that. The great elder shook his head, his face filled with regret. After this matter, I'll definitely punish him severely. Feng Yuan said. After this matter? I'm afraid it's all over. The great elder sighed. Feng Yuan's body stiffened, and he kowtowed even harder. Great elder, please spare him. I promise to discipline him well in the future. Great elder, look at Feng Yuan, please show mercy. Back then, when Nye Mingshan was practicing favoritism, you didn't kill him. You only expelled him. A few people said with a smile. The great elder glanced at them and said, Slap your own mouth. Those people were stunned. Don't you understand? Or do you want this old man to do it personally? The great elder said. No, we'll do it ourselves. Those people hurriedly shook their heads, raised their arms, and slapped their own faces one after another. Not hard enough. The great elder said. Slap. Their eyes trembled, and they hurriedly used all their strength to slap themselves. One after another, loud slapping sounds reverberated in the hall. They regretted it in their hearts. Why did they have to meddle in other people's business? Weren't they just asking for trouble? Chapter 2033. In the square. The surrounding disciples were in high spirits, and their roars resounded through the sky. You must give us an explanation today. We disciples are not animals. Why should we be harmed like this? And Feng Zihan, how did you confidently say that your father isn't such a person? But what happened in the end? You were slapped in the face. Now we are all wondering if you have a part in this. Feng Yuan Hai, who was at the center of the storm, was undoubtedly the target of public criticism. Even Feng Zihan was not spared and was reviled by everyone. Feng Zihan lowered his head, and his eyes were wet. This was the first time he had been treated like this. He felt like a rat crossing the street. Feng Yuan Hai was paralyzed on the ground, and his eyes were dull as if he had lost his soul. The reputation and status that he had fought so hard for were gone in an instant. He was in pain. But more than that, he was filled with hatred. He hated Qin Feiyang. He hated Xueqi. He hated Fire Lotus and Qin Rushuang. Feng Yuan Hai, how long are you going to sit on the ground? Shangguan Fenglan looked over, and her face was frosty. Chengli did not dare to help now and stood aside obediently. He was even a little afraid. He was afraid that Qin Feiyang would settle the score with him. Feng Yuan Hai shuddered and quickly got up, kneeling in front of Shangguan Fenglan. I'm sorry, Hallmaster. I was wrong. I won't dare to do it again. Please help me plead for mercy. I don't want to die. He was no longer as arrogant as before. Now, he was like a dog wagging its tail and begging for mercy. Now you know you were wrong? What were you doing earlier? It's not enough to frame them once, and you want them to frame you a second time. Do you really hate them that much? Shangguan Fenglan said angrily. I was blinded by greed. I'll change, I'll definitely change. I beg you, please help me plead for mercy in front of the first elder, please. Feng Wenhai looked at Shangguan Fenglan pitifully with tears and snot running down his face. Sigh. I'm afraid it's useless even if I plead for mercy. Because this matter is too big, almost everyone in the North region knows about it. And once the world finds out that Zhang Haotian was framed by you, do you know what sort of commotion it will cause? Shangguan Fenglan sighed. Zhang Haotian, I'm sorry, I apologize to you. Please, I beg you, help me. Feng Wenhai then scrambled to Qin Feiyang's side. Zhang Haotian, you can't forgive him so easily for harming you. He must receive the punishment he deserves. The surrounding disciples roared. Dada. Suddenly, Feng Zihan strode towards Qin Feiyang. Fire Lotus and Hua Yi glanced at each other and quickly stood in front of Qin Feiyang. What are you doing? Qin Feiyang frowned. With so many disciples around and Shangguan Fenglan, the hall master of the law enforcement hall, Feng Zihan definitely wouldn't dare to make a move now. Even if Feng Zihan made a move, he wasn't afraid at all. This was because he could enter the Black Tortoise realm at any time. Feng Zihan stopped beside Feng Wenhai and looked at Fire Lotus and Hua Yi. Move aside. But the two of them were indifferent. Don't interfere. Qin Feiyang shook his head helplessly and pulled the two of them back. Feng Zihan stared at Qin Feiyang, her jade-like hands tightly clenched together. You really didn't disappoint me. What a wonderful show. Frenzy leaned on the chair and crossed his legs with a cynical look. But looking at Feng Zihan's back, a cold light flickered in the depths of his eyes. Suddenly, Feng Zihan also knelt on the ground, causing a huge uproar. Senior sister, she actually knelt down to Zhang Haotian? Oh my god! Is this a dream? She who has always been high and mighty, looking down on everyone, actually knelt down in public? Everyone's eyeballs popped out. This was such a shocking and unbelievable scene. I apologize to you on behalf of my father. I'm sorry, my Feng family is willing to make up for your loss and publicly apologize. I only ask for your forgiveness. Feng Zihan lowered her head and said. Kneeling was a lifetime humiliation for her, a stain that couldn't be washed away. But in order to save her father, she chose to bear this humiliation. Because only this man in front of her could save her father's life. Brother Jiang, I'll also kneel down and beg you. In the crowd, Gong Zifeng ran out and knelt in front of Qin Feiyang, looking at Qin Feiyang pleadingly. You? Feng Zihan looked at Gong Zifeng in surprise. In the eyes of others, it was natural for Gong Zifeng to plead for Feng Wenhai. Because Gong Zifeng was Feng Wenhai's son. But for Feng Zihan, it was too surprising. Qin Feiyang was also a little surprised. Gong Zifeng ignored Feng Zihan and looked up at Qin Feiyang with tears in his eyes. Brother Jiang, I can't live without my father, please, let him go this time, okay? Fire Lotus looked at Gong Zifeng and raised her eyebrows in dissatisfaction. She transmitted her voice, Qin Dage. Qin Feiyang waved his hand, looked at Gong Zifeng, and then at Feng Zihan, and said indifferently, I often say to the people around me, no matter who the other party is, no matter how strong the other party is, they have to pay the price for doing wrong. Gong Zifeng and Feng Zihan's eyes trembled. They have to pay the price for doing wrong. This old man likes this sentence. Before Qin Feiyang finished speaking, a hoarse voice sounded in the sky. First Elder, I beg you, please give him a way out. Feng Zihan immediately looked up and shouted. First Elder, if you must kill my father, I'm willing to die for him. Gong Zifeng roared. Feng Wenhai's body shook, and he turned to look at Gong Zifeng in disbelief. He transmitted his voice. Shouldn't you hate me for what I did to you? I hate you very much. There are even times when I wish I could kill you. But you are still my father, my family. I can't just watch you die. Gong Zifeng secretly said. When Feng Wenhai heard these words, it was like a bolt from the blue, and his head rumbled. This was the son he had always hated? How sensible and filial. He was even willing to die for him. Compared to the other Feng Zijun, he was much stronger. He couldn't help but feel guilty in his heart. He had let this child down. If you don't beg this old man's words don't count. Because of this matter, Zhang Haotian is the victim. Zhang Haotian, the choice is yours. If you want him to die, he will die. If you want to let him go, this old man will let him go. The first elder's voice slowly spread in the sky. Swish. In an instant, everyone's gaze was once again directed at Qin Feiyang, including Gong Zifeng, Feng Zihan, Feng Wenhai, and Shangguan Fenglan. Brother Zhang, what is this first elder doing? Why did he let you choose? Could it be that he doesn't want to kill Feng Wenhai? Hua Yi frowned and asked through voice transmission. Whether he wants to kill Feng Wenhai or not, I don't know, but there is one thing I am very clear about. He doesn't want to be the executioner. Qin Feiyang secretly said. What do you mean? Hua Yi was suspicious. Think about it, if he gives the order to kill Feng Wenhai, then Feng Yuan and Feng Zihan will definitely have resentment towards him. On the contrary, he gave me the choice, which is equivalent to me killing Feng Wenhai. At that time, the people of the Feng family will hate me, and it will have nothing to do with him. Qin Feiyang transmitted his voice. Hua Yi was stunned, and the corner of his mouth twitched fiercely. He secretly said, Why do I feel that there is a hint of cunning? This first elder, although I have never met him, it is not difficult to see that he should be a cunning old fox. I even feel that this old fox is behind Shangguan Fenglan. Qin Feiyang said. What? Hua Yi was stunned and said in surprise, You mean the one who wants to kill Feng Yuan is the first elder? Don't jump to conclusions. This is just my feeling. Qin Feiyang secretly said. If it is really the first elder, then this will be interesting. Hua Yi secretly laughed, as if he wanted to see the world in chaos. Qin Feiyang rolled his eyes at him. Then what do you plan to do now? Hua Yi secretly asked. Qin Feiyang pondered for a while and glanced at Shangguan Fenglan, but saw that Shangguan Fenglan was sitting there as if this matter had nothing to do with her. Is this interesting? This made Qin Feiyang very angry. To tell the truth, if the Feng family really did not come to trouble him in the future, it did not matter whether he got rid of them or not. After all, his purpose in entering Nine Heaven Palace was to investigate the ancestor and get some soul stones. He wasn't interested in this kind of power struggle. Qin Feiyang patiently asked via sound transmission, Lord Hallmaster, could it be that you don't have any suggestions? The first elder has already said that you will decide Feng Wenhai's life and death. How can I, as the Hall Master of the Law Enforcement Hall, interfere? Shangguan Fenglan said lightly. Qin Feiyang raised his eyebrows without leaving a trace. He thought to himself, Why do I feel that you and the Great Elder are the same? Both of you want me to face these troubles alone? Do I? Shangguan Fenglan smiled faintly and fell silent. Qin Feiyang was inexplicably irritated. He felt that Shangguan Fenglan and the First Elder were not good people. They were purely using him as a scapegoat. No, this was too passive. He had to take the initiative, otherwise, he would not even know how he died in the future. Brother Zhang, Big Brother Zhang, please do me a favor. I promise you, Lord Father will not trouble you in the future. If Lord Father does not do it, you can take my life at any time. Seeing that Qin Feiyang did not say anything, Gong Zifeng could not wait any longer and begged again. Qin Feiyang's eyes flashed. He suddenly looked at Feng Zihan and said, I can let your father go, but you have to agree to the conditions we discussed before. You are too shameless. Feng Zihan was furious. He did not agree before, but now that the evidence was out, he said this. Wasn't this clearly taking advantage of him and blackmailing him? How could there be such a shameless person? Thank you for the compliment. Then do you agree or not? Qin Feiyang laughed inwardly. Do I have a choice? Feng Zihan glared at Qin Feiyang. Now that his father's life was in this person's hands, how could he not agree? When will you give it to me? Qin Feiyang asked inwardly. Chapter 2034. Feng Zihan sent a sound transmission. 4 billion spirit stones is not a small number, give me some time. That's not appropriate. What if I let your father go now, and after this matter is over, you go back on your word? Who can I reason with? Qin Feiyang thought. Because once he nodded, there would be no chance for regret. It was impossible to say that he would go back on his word and kill Feng Wenhai after not getting the spirit stones, divine arts, and divine weapons. Who would care about such a ridiculous thing? The most important thing was, letting Feng Wenhai go now was equivalent to offending Shangguan Fenglan. In other words, this was a risky decision. If he let him go in the end and didn't get the spirit stones, divine weapons, and divine arts, then wouldn't he suffer a huge loss? Therefore, he had to eliminate all possibilities in advance. Hearing this, Feng Zihan was very dissatisfied, and secretly said angrily, "In my Feng Zihan's, there is no such thing as going back on one's word." Who knows? Qin Feiyang pursed his lips. Feng Zihan said in a deep voice, "Then what do you want?" Qin Feiyang thought for a moment, and sent a sound transmission. "I have a secret technique to control the soul. As long as you are willing to let me control you, I will believe you." This. Feng Zihan's expression froze. Controlling the soul. Wasn't it the same as handing over his life to this person? Don't worry. When you bring the spirit stones, divine arts, and divine weapons, I will naturally remove my control over you. Qin Feiyang thought. Then how do I know that when you get the spirit stones, divine arts, and divine weapons, you won't go back on your word? Feng Zihan said in a deep voice. Qin Feiyang sent a sound transmission. "Now, you can only save your father's life if you believe me." Feng Zihan pondered for a moment, gritted his teeth and said, "All right, I will let you control me. I like people like you who are straightforward." Qin Feiyang chuckled inwardly. He didn't avoid everyone's gaze as he directly transformed the slavery seal into Feng Zihan's head. Because other than Fire Lotus, Mu Tianyang and Mu Qing didn't know about the slave seal, so even if they saw it, they wouldn't know what it was. However, although they didn't know what it was, everyone's face was filled with suspicion when they saw his sudden actions. Slave seal. This fellow's methods are still as terrifying as ever. Mu Tianyang shook his head and sighed. "Ancestor, now is not the time to praise him. Feng Zihan is the #1 on the heaven ranking. Now that he's being controlled by this bastard, won't he be able to do whatever he wants in the 9 Heavens Palace?" Mu Qing snorted. "Wrong." Mu Tianyang shook his head. Mu Qing was slightly stunned and turned to look at Mu Tianyang suspiciously. How can a heaven's pride like Feng Zihan be willing to be controlled by others? If you provoke her, it's entirely possible that she and Qin Feiyang will perish together. And Qin Feiyang is a smart person. He must know this, so I think the two of them must have reached a deal in secret. Mu Tianyang transmitted his voice. "Deal?" Mu Qing frowned. Mu Tianyang said inwardly, "Do you believe that he will let Feng Wenhai go later?" "Impossible. With Qin Feiyang's character, how can he let Feng Wenhai go?" Mu Qing transmitted her voice. "Then let's wait and see." Mu Tianyang laughed inwardly. Mu Qing frowned and looked up at Qin Feiyang, not saying a word for a long time. Could it be that he was really negotiating with Feng Zihan in secret? Feng Zihan also had extraordinary perseverance. As everyone knew, the process of controlling the enslavement seal was very painful. But she only frowned at first, and then looked extremely calm as if nothing had happened. After the enslavement seal was successful, Feng Zihan said inwardly, "As you wish, can you open your mouth now?" "No hurry. Let's wait a little longer, lest others find out that I have a private deal with you." After Qin Feiyang finished speaking, he lowered his head and continued to ponder. Time passed breath by breath. Shangguan Fenglan finally lost her patience and said angrily, "Zhang Haotian, don't waste everyone's time." Qin Feiyang glanced at Shangguan Fenglan, slowly raised his head, glanced at the crowd, then looked up at the sky, and said respectfully, "First Elder, I've thought about it very seriously." "Speak." The voice of the First Elder sounded in the sky. "There's a saying that it's better to squash enmity than keep it alive. Now, Elder Feng has admitted his mistake and said that he will definitely change in the future. And Senior Brother Feng and Senior Sister Feng Zihan, in order to save their father, also put down their pride and pleaded with me. They even knelt down. Senior Brother and Senior Sister have already done so much. If I still don't let it go, Wouldn't it seem that I don't understand the ways of the world? So, I think that this matter should be let go, Qin Feiyong said. As soon as these words came out, Shangguan Fenglan immediately clenched her hands, and a hint of anger flashed in her eyes. The surrounding disciples had a look of disbelief. Feng Wenhai did this to him, but he still let Feng Wenhai go? Was there something wrong with his head? Fire Lotus and Xueqi also had a look of astonishment. They also thought that Qin Feiyong would kill Feng Wenhai, but they didn't expect that he would say such righteous words. Not only them, but Feng Wenhai, who was kneeling on the ground, Feng Yuan in the Great Council Hall, the other big shots, and even the first elder were also dumbfounded. They seriously wondered if there was something wrong with their ears. I know that many people will find this result unbelievable. But the human heart is made of flesh. I really can't bear to watch Hall Master Feng Yuan die before his own. Qin Feiyong sighed, looking as if he was bemoaning the state of the universe and pitying the fate of mankind. So that's how it is. He's not stupid, he's kind. He's really a good person. Elder Feng, you should be more careful in the future. Such a good person. Don't harm him anymore. When the surrounding disciples heard this, they all looked at Qin Feiyong with admiration. Only Feng Zihan's eyes were full of disdain. What a pleasant way to put it. It would be a waste of his talent if he didn't go into acting. The most infuriating thing was that even though she knew that this person was pretending, she still had to treat him with a smile. Thank you, junior brother Jiang. She looked at Qin Feiyong and smiled gratefully. If looks could kill, Qin Feiyong would have died countless times. Thank you, brother Jiang. Gongzi Feng didn't know the truth and thanked him very sincerely. Feng Wenhai also smiled gratefully at Qin Feiyong. Although he was a little surprised, although he still hated Jiang Chen, as long as he could keep his life, it was better than anything. As for the rest, he would talk about it later. Zhang Haotian, are you sure? The first elder's voice sounded again. His tone was still very calm, but Qin Feiyong was keenly aware of a trace of dissatisfaction towards him. Could it be that the person behind Shangguan Fenglan was really this old fox? It seemed that this matter had to be investigated properly. This disciple is sure. Qin Feiyong nodded. All right. This old man will respect your choice. However, you can avoid death, but you can't escape punishment. From today onwards, Feng Wenhai will be stripped of his position as the enforcement elder and expelled from Nine Heavens Palace. He will never be able to step into Nine Heavens Palace again. The first elder said. Thank you, first elder, for not killing me. Feng Wenhai knelt on the ground and said gratefully. He was already very satisfied to be able to keep his life. And he had already expected this result, because the first elder wouldn't allow a tainted person to continue staying in Nine Heavens Palace. Of course. Now he didn't have the face to continue staying here. Since the truth has been revealed, Zhang Haotian's innocence will naturally be cleared. Shangguan Fenglan, I'll leave this matter to you. The first elder said. Yes. Shangguan Fenglan stood up and respectfully replied. Then this matter will end here. The first elder's voice quickly faded away. Shangguan Fenglan retracted her gaze and shouted, Qingli, immediately send Feng Wenhai out of Nine Heavens Palace. Understood. Chengli nodded and looked at Feng Wenhai saying, Let's go. Sigh. Feng Wenhai reluctantly glanced at Nine Heavens Palace, then let out a low sigh and flew into the air, leaving with Changli dejectedly. Zhang Haotian, come see me tonight. Shangguan Fenglan glanced at Qin Feiyong and said secretly before quickly disappearing. As expected, I've angered her. Qin Feiyong rubbed his forehead, feeling a little irritated. But when he thought of the 4 billion soul stones, he became spirited again. He looked at Feng Zihan and said with a smile, Senior sister, don't make me wait too long. Humph. Feng Zihan coldly snorted and turned to leave. Qin Feiyong rubbed his nose and looked at Feng Zihan's back with a smile in his eyes. Let's go, let's go. Madman also stood up and shouted. Qin Feiyong was slightly taken aback, then quickly looked at Madman and said with a smile, Senior brother Madman, are you satisfied with this show? The first half was pretty good. But the second half was a little boring. Madman shook his head and left. I think it's okay. Qin Feiyong muttered. Although the final result was a little different from his original plan, It still ruined Feng Wenhai's reputation and drove him out. At the same time, he also obtained 4 billion soul stones for pinnacle-level divine artifacts and 4 pinnacle-level divine arts. And it was also an indirect demonstration to Shangguan Fenglan. This was a huge profit. Zhang Haotian, I really admire your character. Yeah, you even let Feng Wenhai go, you're really benevolent. If there's a chance in the future, please give me face and have a few drinks. I really want to make friends with you. After Feng Zihan, Cheng Li, Feng Wenhai, and Shangguan Fenglan left, the surrounding disciples also became active and surrounded Qin Feiyang. Qin Feiyang looked at the surrounding disciples with a stunned expression. It seemed that he had earned a good reputation along the way. Not bad, not bad. He couldn't be more satisfied with this result and said with a smile, all right, if there's a chance in the future, I'll definitely treat everyone to a drink. Then it's settled. You're probably tired, go rest. Everyone, let's disperse. At that moment, everyone left in groups of 2s and 3s. Mu Tianyang also left with Mu Qing and Xueqi without saying a word. Gong Zifeng didn't leave. When most of the others had left, he turned to look at Qin Feiyang and said gratefully, Brother Zhang, thank you so much. Equal exchange. No need to thank me. Qin Feiyang said with a faint smile. Equal exchange? Gong Zifeng was stunned and didn't understand. Chapter 2035. Go ask your big sister. Qin Feiyang smiled faintly. My big sister? Gong Zifeng was even more confused. Go, I still have things to do. Qin Feiyang waved his hand and smiled. All right, let's meet again. Gong Zifeng nodded and turned around to nod at Gao Xiaolong as a form of greeting before leaving without looking back. Gao Xiaolong looked at Gong Zifeng's back, and his eyes flickered. Suddenly, a light flashed in his eyes as he walked towards Qin Feiyang's group, cupping his fists and smiling. The 3 of you have finally been vindicated, congratulations. Hua Yi chuckled. Then shouldn't you invite us to the Jade Zither Pavilion to celebrate? Me. Gao Xiaolong was taken aback and smiled bitterly. With my little financial strength, how can I afford to spend money at the Jade Zither Pavilion? You're still a disciple of the 9 Heavens Palace. Is there a need to cry poverty in front of us? Hua Yi pouted. Gao Xiaolong's dragon god was embarrassed. He wasn't crying poverty, he was really poor. Because he didn't have the courage of the 3 people in front of him, nor did he have outstanding means and strength. He could only go to the bulletin board to accept missions and earn soul stones. Don't make fun of others. Qin Feiyang rolled his eyes at Hua Yi and looked at Gao Xiaolong. Everyone left, only you stayed here, is there something wrong? Gao Xiaolong nodded, and his expression became serious. Qin Feiyang's group looked at each other before looking at Gao Xiaolong again. Gao Xiaolong said inwardly, just now, I noticed that Gong Zifeng's expression was a little strange. Strange? Qin Feiyang was stunned, and he asked suspiciously, what do you mean? When you took out the 3rd video, I noticed that his expression suddenly became very scary. It felt like he hated you guys. Gao Xiaolong transmitted. Hated us? Fire Lotus frowned. Gao Xiaolong said, this is just my personal guess, don't take it seriously. Qin Feiyang pondered for a moment and smiled inwardly. Actually, this matter is not beyond my expectations. What do you mean? Gao Xiaolong was a little dazed. A few days ago, when I left 9 Heaven Palace, I sent him a message and asked him these questions. At that time, he was very hesitant. What does this mean? This means that he still has some feelings for Feng Wenhai in his heart. Qin Feiyang thought. Gao Xiaolong was bewildered. Then why are you helping him? Aren't you afraid that raising a tiger will only invite calamity? I'm not even afraid of Feng Wenhai, so why should I be afraid of him? Furthermore, I've already given him advice. I think he should know his limits. Qin Feiyang said with a smile. Hearing this, Gao Xiaolong nodded. That's true. Even Feng Wenhai was forced to this extent, so a mere Gong Zifeng was naturally nothing in his eyes. Qin Feiyang sized up Gao Xiaolong, then suddenly transmitted his voice to Huang Xiaolong. I have a question for you. What is it? Gao Xiaolong was suspicious. Qin Feiyang said, if one day you find out that I have a deep hatred for you, Will you harm me behind my back? Me and you? What kind of deep hatred can we have? Gao Xiaolong shook his head and smiled. I said what if? Qin Feiyong said inwardly. What if? Gao Xiaolong frowned, saying seriously, if it weren't for Big Brother Jiang, Xiao Hui and I would have lost our lives. Therefore, even if there is a deep hatred between us, I won't harm you. At most, it will be a debt of gratitude. Fire Lotus snickered inwardly. Qin Dage, this person is not bad. Qin Feiyong smiled faintly, saying inwardly, Old Zhao, help me count out 10 million soul stones. Okay. Zhao Tai Lai answered from inside the castle. Qin Feiyong looked at Gao Xiaolong smiling. Remember what you said today. Gao Xiaolong nodded. Qin Feiyong suddenly thought of Gu Yong, transmitting his voice to Gao Xiaolong. Did anyone go looking for Gongzi Feng recently? Gao Xiaolong thought for a moment, then shook his head. I don't think so. No. Qin Feiyong frowned. What is this Gu Yong doing? Gao Xiaolong looked suspiciously at Qin Feiyong. Why are you suddenly asking this? Nothing. Qin Feiyong shook his head, pondering for a moment, then said inwardly, how about this, help me keep an eye on Gongzi Feng. If there is any situation, immediately report to me. No problem. Gao Xiaolong nodded without hesitation. Young lord, it's done. At this time, Zhao Tailai's voice sounded in Qin Feiyong's mind. Qin Feiyong's mind moved slightly, and a universe bag appeared out of thin air. He looked at Gao Xiaolong and smiled. This is for you. What is it? Gao Xiaolong suspiciously received the universe bag, and when he checked it, he was dumbfounded. Inside it was actually full of soul stones. Brother, what's inside? Fire Lotus looked curiously at the universe bag. 10 million soul stones. Qin Feiyong smiled. What? Fire Lotus's body stiffened. Fire Lotus was also dumbfounded. He actually gave Gao Xiaolong 10 million soul stones. This was too generous. He was really willing to part with it, Big Brother Jiang this? Gao Xiaolong regained his senses. Looking at Qin Feiyong, he felt like he was dreaming. Keep it. Take it as a little compensation for you and Gao shall we? Qin Feiyong smiled faintly, then disappeared without a trace with Fire Lotus and Fire Lotus. Compensation? Gao Xiaolong stood dumbfounded in the square. What did this mean? Why was this person acting so weird today? What did you say? Zhang Haotian and the others slandering the Nine Heavens Palace was framed by Feng Wenhai? Yes. Are you joking? Feng Wenhai is an elder of the enforcement hall. How could he do such a thing? It's absolutely true. The nephew of a distant cousin of mine is a disciple of the Nine Heavens Palace. He saw it not long ago. He also said that Feng Wenhai has been expelled from the Nine Heavens Palace. This is too much, A dignified enforcement hall elder actually did such a despicable thing. Is it too easy for him to be expelled from the Nine Heavens Palace? It said that Zhang Haotian forgave him, that's why he kept his little life. Is this Zhang Haotian stupid? He actually forgave him after doing such a thing to him? Toppling Feng Wenhai so easily, is he stupid? I can only say that he's a good person. Outside, the news of Feng Wenhai framing Qin Feiyong and the others spread like wildfire. Feng Wenhai instantly became a rat on the street. Everyone wanted to beat him up. Back to Qin Feiyong. At this moment, he controlled the Black Tortoise world, silently flying towards the depths of the Nine Heavens Palace. Brother Jiang, where are we going? Hua Yi asked suspiciously. Fire Lotus also looked at Qin Feiyong in confusion. Looking for Shangguan Fenglan. Are you suspecting that the Great Elder is the real mastermind? So we have to investigate. Qin Feiyong said. I see. The two of them nodded in realization. Hua Yi sighed. If it's really the Great Elder, then this matter won't end so easily. Half an hour passed. The Black Tortoise world finally descended above the Lotus Lake. However, after searching the entire Lotus Lake, the three of them still couldn't find any trace of Shangguan Fenglan. Could it be that she has already gone to see the Great Elder? Fire Lotus was suspicious. Qin Feiyong asked, Brother Hua, do you know where the Great Elder lives? I don't know about that. After all, I didn't pay attention to him before and didn't inquire about his situation. Hua Yi shook his head. Swish. But before his voice faded, An old figure descended in the sky above Lotus Lake. Qin Feiyong and the other two looked over and discovered that it was a black-haired old man with an unfathomable aura.
Who is he?
Fire Lotus was bewildered.
I don't know. Xueqi shook his head.
The old man glanced around and went straight into the attic. Qin Feiyong controlled the black tortoise world and followed behind. After seeing the old man enter the attic, he sat silently beside the tea table, his face a little ugly.
Could it be that he's the Great Elder? Xueqi muttered. Another moment passed. Swish! Suddenly, a purple-clothed woman appeared above the lake.
It was Shangguan Fenglan.
Her face was also a little ugly.
When she entered the attic and saw the black-haired old man sitting beside the tea table, she was slightly stunned at first, then hurriedly bowed and said, "Greetings to the Great Elder."
It's really him. Xueqi frowned.
Qin Feiyong said, "Feng Wenhai's matter has just ended, and he personally came to find Shangguan Fenglan. This matter may be as you think."
Outside,
the Great Elder looked up at Shangguan Fenglan and said, "Sit." Shangguan Fenglan sat at the side. The Great Elder asked, "How are the arrangements for the aftermath?"
The notice has been issued.
Now everyone should know that Zhang Haotian was framed. Shangguan Fenglan said. The Great Elder nodded and frowned.
How did you and Zhang Haotian talk?
Such a good opportunity. Why did you let Feng Wenhai go? I've been wondering about this matter. I've already asked him to come to see me tonight, and I'll ask him properly. Shangguan Fenglan said.
You must ask clearly.
What we need is an obedient person, not a person who agrees in public but disobeys in private. Do you understand? The Great Elder said.
Understood.
Shangguan Fenglan nodded.
Well then, it's up to you.
This old man came to you for another matter. The Great Elder said.
What is it?
Shangguan Fenglan asked. The Great Elder said with a faint smile, "Find a trustworthy person to go to the resource hall." Shangguan Fenglan was shocked. She looked at the Great Elder and said in surprise, "You're?" Although Feng Yuan has been managing the resource hall well these years, he's already old and his energy is limited.
It's time to find someone to help him.
The Great Elder said with a smile. Shangguan Fenglan's pupils shrank slightly, and she asked, "Then I wonder if you have someone in mind?"
What do you think of Zhang Haotian?
The Great Elder pondered for a while and looked at Shangguan Fenglan.
What?
Zhang Haotian. Shangguan Fenglan was stunned. Inside the Black Tortoise realm, Qin Feiyong and the other two also looked at each other. Shangguan Fenglan came back to her senses and hurriedly looked at the Great Elder, saying, "This Zhang Haotian is not suitable. Let's not talk about trust. His qualifications are not enough." His qualifications are indeed not enough. This old man can't train him as the next hall master of the resource hall. But at present, he is the most suitable candidate. The Great Elder said. Is it because of Feng Yuan? Shangguan Fenglan said. Chapter 2036. Feng Yuan isn't someone who only knows how to take a beating. Although Zhang Haotian let Feng Wenhai go this time, the one who made Feng Wenhai fall to this point is still Zhang Haotian. I don't think he'll let it go. The First Elder smiled faintly. Shangguan Fenglan said, "So you let Zhang Haotian enter the resource hall and let them slowly fight?" I didn't know Zhang Haotian before. Although I don't know him now, at least I can be sure that he has the ability. The First Elder said. Even if he has the ability, the other disciples won't be convinced if he suddenly enters the resource hall. After all, the treatment in the resource hall is better than other places. Shangguan Fenglan frowned. This is a problem you should think about. All right, I've said what I need to say. Think about it yourself. After the First Elder finished speaking, he did not linger for a moment. With a flicker, he disappeared without a trace. He's really the one behind the scenes. Fire Lotus shook her head. Xueqi sighed. Fire Lotus, whether he's the one behind the scenes or not is not the main point now. Then what is the main point? Fire Lotus was puzzled. Didn't you hear what he said? What they want is someone who's obedient. Obviously, Brother Zhang letting Feng Wenhai go this time has caused him to be dissatisfied. If Brother Zhang disobeys his wishes in the future, It will definitely bring about a fatal disaster. Huai said. Fire Lotus was shocked and looked at Qin Feiyong. Don't be nervous. Qin Feiyong smiled at Fire Lotus and looked at Shangguan Fenglan on the screen. His eyes flickered. A moment later, Qin Feiyong looked at Huai and asked, Do you know the treatment in the resource hall? You really want to go to the resource hall? Huai was stunned and frowned. Qin Feiyong smiled. If the treatment is really good, why not? The treatment in the resource hall is indeed better than the outer and inner disciples. It's said that you can receive 1,000 soul stones every month. Huai said. The treatment is really good. Fire Lotus nodded. One had to know that outer sect disciples only received 10 soul stones every month. As for the inner disciples, they only had 50. Huai shot a glance at Qin Feiyong, then looked at Fire Lotus and said, In the eyes of other disciples, 1,000 soul stones is indeed very tempting. But for your big brother, he can even give away 10 million soul stones without blinking an eye. What are these soul stones worth? Fire Lotus smiled bitterly. Giving Gao Xiaolong 10 million soul stones was a little painful. Huai looked at Qin Feiyong and said, Brother Jiang, why don't we withdraw? Don't meddle in other people's business, lest we invite trouble upon ourselves. You only want to retreat now? Can we make it in time? Qin Feiyong shook his head and sighed. He smiled and said, However, I am interested in this resource hall. What? Huai was stunned. After talking for so long, he didn't even listen to a single word? Fire Lotus looked at Qin Feiyong suspiciously. Her eyes suddenly lit up as she asked, Brother, you can't be. Sure. Qin Feiyong quickly made a shushing gesture. Fire Lotus was stunned. She glanced at Huai at the side, covering her mouth as she laughed. Understood, understood. What do you mean? After being together for so long, can't you trust each other a little more? Huai was annoyed. Qin Feiyong smiled. It's not a matter of trust. Then tell me, what is the problem? Huai was furious. I don't want to implicate you. Qin Feiyong said. Less nonsense. You want to enter the resource hall so badly. There must be some unspeakable secret. Huai harumphed coldly. Qin Feiyong laughed heartily. Controlling the Black Tortoise world, he left Lotus Lake and flew toward the outer sect. Back in his cultivation dwelling, Qin Feiyong sent Huai away, then closed his eyes and used the slave seal to sense Guyong's location. And a moment later, his brows suddenly furrowed. What's wrong? Fire Lotus looked at him suspiciously. Qin Feiyong frowned. This Guyong seems to be hiding. Fire Lotus was taken aback. He shouldn't dare. His current location is very far from the Nine Heavens Palace. Wait. Let me peek into his inner thoughts again. Qin Feiyong muttered, then closed his eyes again. North region, west. In a very remote mountain, there was a small courtyard that had just been built. In the courtyard, a middle-aged man was lying on an armchair, drinking tea while basking in the sun, looking extremely comfortable. This person was Guyong. Soon, a woman walked out, looked at Guyong, and asked, Is this really okay? What's wrong with this? Guyong laughed. The woman frowned. Why aren't you worried at all? There's no need to worry. I don't believe that he can find me after hiding so far away. Guyong sneered. What about the slave seal? The woman asked worriedly. It's okay. After staying in the Nine Heavens Palace for so many years, how can I not know about this kind of control secret technique? As long as I'm far enough away, he can't erase my soul at all. Guyong said. The woman said, But you can't always be controlled by him like this, right? Don't worry. Feng Yuan won't let him go. Once he dies, the enslavement imprint will naturally be removed. Let's not talk about this. Guyong waved his hand, glanced at the wooden building beside him, and asked in a low voice, Are the two elders used to it? The woman sighed. How can they get used to it when they suddenly came to such a place? Then you should accompany them more. Guyong said. I will. The woman nodded. Inside the cave abode, Qin Feiyong slowly opened his eyes, which were full of ridicule. What's wrong? Fire Lotus looked at him curiously. This Guyong thinks that as long as he stays away, I can't do anything to him. How naive. Qin Feiyong shook his head and laughed.
Then what do you plan to do with him? Fire Lotus asked.
Qin Feiyong said, I wanted him to help Gongzi Feng, but it seems that there's no need for that now.
He's angry. Fire Lotus said.
No. It's understandable that Gongzi Feng would have such a reaction.
But that's that. I can't be close to this person anymore. Naturally, there's no need to help him.
As for this Gu Yong, Qin Feiyong pondered for a while and smiled.
Anyway, he's just a small character.
As long as he's honest, let him be. Fire Lotus nodded and asked, You really entered the resource hall for the Vein of Souls?
Otherwise, why would I go to the resource hall? Qin Feiyong smiled.
The Vein of Souls was controlled by the resource hall. If one wanted to obtain the Vein of Souls, they naturally had to enter the resource hall to understand the details.
You're really bold.
Fire Lotus shook her head helplessly.
Qin Feiyong said, I'm just thinking about it. Whether or not I should do it, I still have to consider it carefully.
Fire Lotus asked suspiciously, Then why did you let Feng Wenhai go?
Didn't I tell Gongzi Feng? This is an equal deal. Qin Feiyong explained the situation briefly. After listening, Fire Lotus was dumbstruck. No wonder he suddenly changed his mind. It turned out that he had a private deal with Feng Zihan.
Qin Feiyong warned, You have to keep this matter a secret. You can't let Shangguan Fenglan and Huayi know about it. Fire Lotus was startled, then covered her mouth and laughed. You want to swallow Huayi's share as well?
I'm not going to swallow his share.
You know how Huayi feels about Shangguan Fenglan. If one day he's obsessed and tells Shangguan Fenglan about this, wouldn't we be finished?
Qin Feiyong said.
Letting Feng Wenhai go had already made Shangguan Fenglan unhappy. If he let her know that he had a private deal with Feng Zihan, his future in Nine Heavens Palace would be even more difficult. Fire Lotus heard this and nodded. That makes sense, but aren't you afraid that Feng Wenhai will take revenge on you? Feng Wenhai has been expelled from Nine Heavens Palace. Even if he wants to harm us, he won't be able to find a chance, so there's nothing to worry about. Our biggest enemies now are Feng Yuan, Feng Zihan, and Feng Wenhai's wife, Yin Hui. Of course, there's also Shangguan Fenglan and the Great Elder. These people have both status and strength. We have to be extra careful.
Qin Feiyong said.
Hual Yan smiled and said, You forgot about someone, Feng Zijuan.
Him.
Qin Feiyong shook his head and smiled, saying lightly, It's not that I look down on him, but with his little ability, even if he was given a chance, he wouldn't be able to make any waves. If Feng Zijun heard what you said now, he would probably go crazy with anger. Fire Lotus couldn't help but laugh.
Sky Dragon City.
In the outskirts near the southern city gate, there were many individual courtyards scattered about.
In one of the courtyards,
a middle-aged man sat weakly on a chair, his entire body emitting a dispirited aura.
Beside him,
a man and a woman stood together, looking at the middle-aged man, their faces full of worry. These three people were Feng Wenhai, Feng Zihan, and Gongzi Feng.
Suddenly,
an old man walked in with large strides.
Grandfather.
Feng Zihan and Gongzi Feng hurriedly bowed. Feng Yuan glanced at Gongzi Feng, then looked at Feng Wenhai, his eyebrows slightly raised. Feng Zihan hurriedly said, Grandfather, you really can't blame father for this matter.
I know.
Feng Yuan sat opposite Feng Wenhai and said in a deep voice, Did you find Gu Yong? Feng Zihan said, I went to his house before, but it was already empty.
That means he's not dead yet.
This bastard, we were so good to him, but he actually betrayed us. We must not let him off.
Feng Yuan was furious.
Feng Zihan said respectfully, I will find his whereabouts as soon as possible. Feng Yuan waved his hand. Don't worry about this matter.
Why?
Feng Zihan did not understand. After such a big thing happened, the great clan elder will definitely pay special attention to us. He might even monitor us. So from now on, don't worry about anything. Just stabilize your position as number 1 on the heaven board. As long as you stabilize your position as number 1 on the heaven board, you will have the chance to become the palace master or the successor of the vice palace master in the future.
Feng Yuan said in a deep voice.
Yes. Feng Zihan nodded. Feng Yuan asked again, Where are Feng Zijun and your mother? Feng Zijun is still facing the wall to reflect on his mistakes. As for mother, she is at a critical juncture of her closed-door cultivation, so I didn't dare to tell her about this.
Feng Zihan said.
Chapter 2037. Well done. At this time, don't disturb your mother. As for Feng Zijun, go and tell him that if he dares to cause trouble for me in the future, I will treat it as if I don't have a grandson like him.
Feng Yuan said gloomily.
If not for Feng Zijun provoking Qin Feiyang back then, how could this have happened?
I know.
Feng Zihan replied. Feng Yuan took a deep breath, his gaze turned, and landed on Gong Zifeng. Gong Zifeng lowered his head and bent his waist, completely not daring to meet Feng Yuan's gaze. After a long time, a trace of a smile actually appeared on Feng Yuan's face as he nodded and said, "Your performance this time has made this old man very pleased." Gong Zifeng was overjoyed, and hurriedly said, "This is what grandson should do." "What I should do?" Feng Yuan muttered with a trace of regret in his eyes. How good would it be if this child in front of him wasn't an illegitimate child? He secretly sighed and said, "In the future if you need anything, just tell this old man." "Thank you, grandfather. Grandson doesn't need anything." At this point, Gong Zifeng's expression became hesitant, with a trace of apprehension, and finally mustered up his courage, and said, "Grandson only wants to give mother a status." Upon hearing this, the smile on Feng Yuan's face immediately disappeared and was replaced by a gloomy expression. Feng Zihan's expression also changed slightly as he glared at Gong Zifeng and shouted, "What should be said, what shouldn't be said? Don't you have any sense of propriety? Hurry up and apologize to grandfather." Gong Zifeng looked at Feng Zihan, his eyes filled with unwillingness. "It seems that this old man has misunderstood. What you did in the square wasn't because you wanted to save your father, but because you wanted to win our sympathy for your mother," Feng Yuan said with a cold smile. Gong Zifeng's expression suddenly changed, and hurriedly said, "Grandfather, it's not like that, I really want to save father." But before he could finish, Feng Yuan pointed to the door and said, "Get out." "Grandfather?" Gong Zifeng was extremely anxious, and his face could not help but turn pale. Scram! Feng Yuan suddenly stood up and roared. Gong Zifeng's gaze trembled, and he could not help but look at Feng Wenhai, and helplessly called out, "Father!" However, Feng Wenhai only raised his head and glanced at him indifferently, then lowered his head again, and did not say anything. Gong Zifeng's hands clenched. Why did she have to do this to him? He just wanted to give his mother a status. Was that wrong? Father has been expelled from Nine Heavens Palace, and the Feng clan's reputation has been ruined. Grandfather is already angry, yet you say such words. Aren't you just adding fuel to the fire? He really has no sense of propriety at all. Hurry up and get out. Don't make Grandpa angry again. Otherwise, no one will be able to save you. Feng Zihan transmitted. When Gong Zifeng heard this, he looked at Feng Wenhai and Feng Yuan. He suppressed the anger in his heart and walked out with his head lowered. "You want a status? That will never happen. Our Feng clan can't afford to lose face like this." Feng Yuan shouted angrily. He was so angry that his beard was blowing and his eyes were glaring. Gong Zifeng's body trembled, and he couldn't help but shed tears. At the same time, an unresolvable resentment rose in his heart. Feng Zihan looked at Gong Zifeng's back and sighed inwardly. He walked to Feng Yuan's side and comforted, "Grandfather, he didn't do it on purpose. Don't be angry. Wouldn't it be great if they could be as sensible and promising as you?" Feng Yuan shook his head and sighed. Then he frowned and said, "Speaking of which, what did Zhang Haotian mean this time? He actually let your father go?" This? Feng Zihan's expression stiffened. Feng Yuan looked at Feng Zihan suspiciously and asked, "It has something to do with you?" "Yes." Feng Zihan nodded. He honestly told Feng Yuan about the private deal. "That damned little bastard." Feng Yuan was furious. Feng Zihan carefully asked, "Grandfather, you won't blame me, right?" Feng Yuan was stunned. He shook his head and sighed. "You did this to save your father. Why would I blame you?" Feng Zihan sighed in relief. "But 4 billion divine crystals, 4 peak-grade divine artifacts, and 4 peak-grade divine arts, you can't take it out. Feng Yuan said. Although I can receive a lot of soul stones every month, I've already refined them. I really can't take it out. Feng Zihan said. It's really hard on you. Feng Yuan patted Feng Zihan's hand and said, Let grandfather think of a way. Thank you, grandfather. Feng Zihan said gratefully. In the room, the grandfather and grandson were happy and harmonious. However, outside the room, Gongzi Feng was squatting in a corner, crying bitterly. The resentment in his heart was getting stronger and stronger. Late at night, Jingxin Lake. The calm surface of the lake reflected the full moon. The surroundings were quiet. It was particularly peaceful. Shangguan Fenglan stood alone on the balcony, looking at the lake without moving. Her expression was calm. No one knew what she was thinking at the moment. Swish! Suddenly, a figure descended above the lake. It was Qin Feiyang. This time, he did not bring Xueqi and Fire Lotus. He came alone. Qin Feiyang glanced at Shangguan Fenglan, then flew over and bowed. Disciple Zhang Haotian greets Lord Hall Master. Shangguan Fenglan did not look at him, nor did she respond to him. She kept looking at the lake, as if she did not know that Qin Feiyang had arrived. What are you looking at? So engrossed? Qin Feiyang was suspicious. He followed Shangguan Fenglan's gaze and found that there was nothing but a few lotus flowers. After a while, Shangguan Fenglan suddenly said, Are those lotus flowers beautiful? Qin Feiyang was somewhat baffled and casually replied, Beautiful. Yes, very beautiful. Especially when they are in full bloom. They are breathtaking. However, their blooming time is too short. It will not be long before they wither. And after they wither, they will no longer be able to attract people's attention. Shangguan Fenglan said faintly. Qin Feiyang frowned. She called him here just to let him listen to this nonsense? Wait. These words. Something was wrong. There seemed to be a hidden meaning in her words. He pondered carefully and suddenly came to a realization. This Shangguan Fenglan on the surface was talking about the lotus flowers, but in fact, she was talking about him. In other words, Shangguan Fenglan compared him to a lotus flower. If he was obedient, he would always bloom in Jiutian Palace. But if he was not obedient, then he would slowly wither and wither like these lotus flowers. In other words, this was a warning. Warning him not to mess around in the future. Shangguan Fenglan finally got to the point and said, Answer me, why did you let Feng Wenhai go? Actually, I was also very helpless about this matter. At that time, you also saw that even Feng Zihan knelt down and begged for mercy. If I didn't let him go, wouldn't she take revenge on me in the future? I'm just an ordinary disciple. I have no background and no one to help me. How would I dare to offend her? Qin Feiyang said aggrievedly. Shangguan Fenglan said angrily, Am I not helping you? You. Qin Feiyang was slightly stunned, shook his head and sighed. Lord Palace Master is high and mighty. How would I dare to have extravagant hopes? As long as Lord Palace Master does not cheat me behind my back, I am already very satisfied. What do you mean? Shangguan Fenglan suddenly raised her head and stared at Qin Feiyang, two cold rays of light shooting out from her eyes. Qin Feiyang looked straight into Shangguan Fenglan's eyes and said, What do I mean? Lord Palace Master is not very clear in your heart? Shangguan Fenglan's eyes narrowed slightly, revealing a dangerous signal. Qin Feiyang smiled faintly and said, Previously, Lord Palace Master compared this disciple to a lotus flower and warned this disciple. Now, this disciple dares to come and nag. Shangguan Fenglan said, You actually understood it. Your comprehension is quite good. It's just a... Qin Feiyang waved his hand and said with a smile. When I was young, this disciple heard a story. The story went like this. Once upon a time, there was an elephant. When it was passing by a road, it encountered an ant blocking its way. The elephant was very disdainful of this ant. Because it was big, it could casually trample the ant to death, so it shouted at the ant to get out of the way. This ant also had a temper and refused to give way. The elephant suddenly felt that its self-esteem was being challenged, so it wanted to trample the ant to death. In the face of death, the ant could only obediently give way, and then the elephant swaggered away. After that, This elephant was injured and fell to the ground, and did not even have the strength to move.
It was also at this time that the little ant appeared, and it also brought a large group of ants.
They ran onto the elephant and wantonly gnawed on the elephant's flesh and blood, ending the elephant's life bit by bit. After they finished gnawing on the elephant's flesh and blood, they gnawed on the elephant's bones. Finally, one day, the elephant's bones were all gnawed, and not a single bone was left. Then, the little ant swaggered away proudly. And that elephant, never in its wildest dreams, would have thought that in the end, it would actually die in the hands of the ants and become their food.
Qin Feiyong said with a smile. Hearing this story, Shangguan Fenglan's hands could not help but gradually clench.
This was obviously also a warning to her.
Lord Palace Master, don't misunderstand. This disciple has no other meaning. I just want to express a concept.
Being strong and having a hard fist does not necessarily mean that you can control the life and death of others.
Qin Feiyong retracted his gaze, turned around, looked at Shangguan Fenglan, and said with a faint smile. Shangguan Fenglan loosened her hands and looked away from Qin Feiyong. She said lightly, "You are right. No one has the right to control the life and death of others.
However, an elephant is an elephant, and an ant is an ant. No matter how strong the ant is, it can only wait for the elephant to fall before it dares to take revenge."
It seems to make sense.
But many things are unpredictable, don't you think so?
Qin Feiyong said with a smile. Very right. After a while, the resource hall will recruit people.
This Highness wants to see just how strong this ant is.
Shangguan Fenglan said expressionlessly. Then, Lord Palace Master, please wait and see. Qin Feiyong smiled.
Shangguan Fenglan waved her hand and said, "You can go."
This disciple will take his leave.
Qin Feiyong bowed, and with a flicker, he disappeared without a trace. Elephant. Ant? What a ridiculous story. Shangguan Fenglan looked at the silent night sky, and a trace of murderous intent appeared in her eyes. Elephants were also divided into smart and stupid, and a smart elephant would strangle an uncontrollable hidden danger in the cradle.
Chapter 2038.
When Qin Feiyong returned to his cave abode, Fire Lotus immediately went up to him and asked in concern, "How did it go?"
Not much.
She wanted to intimidate me the moment she went.
However, I'm not a pushover either. Qin Feiyong said. Fire Lotus frowned.
In that case, do we really have to guard against them in the future?
Of course. Qin Feiyong sighed. Dong. Suddenly, there was a knock on the door.
The two of them turned to look at the stone door. Who would come looking for them in the middle of the night?
It shouldn't be Xueqi because Xueqi never knocks. Fire Lotus mumbled.
Could it be? The same person appeared in their minds at the same time.
Qin Feiyong smiled.
Lass, go open the door and invite her in.
Fire Lotus nodded with a smile, turned and ran over to open the stone door.
A graceful figure suddenly appeared in front of him.
It was Feng Zihan.
"Senior sister, please come in."
Fire Lotus retreated to the side and said with a smile.
Feng Zihan glanced at Fire Lotus and Qin Feiyong, who was sitting inside, before entering the cave abode slowly. Fire Lotus waved her hand again and the door of the cave abode closed tightly.
Qin Feiyong pointed to a stone stool at the side and smiled. "Senior sister, please take a seat.
Lass, prepare tea."
"No need."
Feng Zihan waved her hand and scanned the cave abode, frowning.
"Your cave abode is way too shabby." Qin Feiyong smiled. "It's not your own home. Why do you have to make it so luxurious?"
Feng Zihan did not waste time and took out a cosmos ring from her bosom, tossing it to Qin Feiyong. "This is what you want."
"Wow! It's a cosmos ring."
"Senior sister, you're so generous." Fire Lotus walked to Qin Feiyong's side as though she had never seen the world and exclaimed in surprise at the cosmos ring. Feng Zihan said, "There are too many soul stones, the Chenkuan bag can't hold them all." Fire Lotus asked, "Do I have to return the interspatial ring to you later?" Feng Zihan raised his eyebrows and said unhappily, "Do you think I care about an interspatial ring?"
Fire Lotus was dumbfounded.
She smiled embarrassedly and said, "Sorry, I forgot about your identity.
It's just a cosmos ring. You won't care about it."
Qin Feiyong threw the cosmos ring to Fire Lotus and said with a smile, Go and check it. After he finished speaking, he sent the fire lotus back to the castle. Then he looked at Feng Zihan and said, Senior sister, please wait for a moment. Feng Zihan nodded and stood there silently, giving off a cold feeling that kept people 1,000 miles away. Qin Dage, the numbers are all correct. Soon. Fire Lotus's voice sounded in Qin Feiyang's mind. Qin Feiyang's heart skipped a beat. He looked at Feng Zihan and said, Giving it all to me so easily, aren't you afraid I'll go back on my word? Feng Zihan raised his eyebrows. I'm just joking, don't get excited. Qin Feiyang said and directly removed Feng Zihan's enslavement seal. Frankly speaking, he was really afraid that Feng Zihan would fight him to the death. After all, this woman was too strong, and her status in Nine Heavens Palace was unparalleled. If the big shots of Nine Heavens Palace were to choose, they would definitely choose Feng Zihan without hesitation. After the enslavement seal was removed, Feng Zihan was relieved. But she didn't leave. She took out another interspatial ring from her bosom and threw it in front of Qin Feiyang. Qin Feiyang was stunned. He caught the interspatial ring and looked at it carefully. He was a little dazed. There were about 1 billion soul stones in this interspatial ring. What did this mean? Feng Zihan said, Exactly 1 billion soul stones, not one more, not one less. What are you trying to do? Qin Feiyang frowned. 1 billion soul stones was not a small number. It was impossible to give it to him for no reason. Feng Zihan said, I want to use this 1 billion soul stones to buy Guyong's whereabouts. Guyong? Qin Feiyang was stunned. A mere Guyong was worth 1 billion soul stones? Feng Zihan said, I believe that Guyong is no longer of any value to you. To me, he is indeed no longer of any value. Qin Feiyang said. Feng Zihan said, Then give him to me. A traitor should be punished accordingly. This, Qin Feiyang was a little hesitant. Feng Zihan frowned. 1 billion soul stones are in front of you, you still don't want it? Yes, of course. But, Qin Feiyang frowned and sighed. I won't lie to you. In fact, after the conversation with your father, Gu Yong was already killed by me. Killed? Feng Zihan was stunned and asked, Then what about his family? It's not his wife and children's fault, so I didn't kill his family. I just told them to leave Sky Dragon City as soon as possible. As for where they went, I don't know. Look at this news. Can you earn the 1 billion soul stones? Qin Feiyang looked at the universe ring in his hand and asked unwillingly. Are you dreaming? Feng Zihan snatched the universe ring away. Qin Feiyang hurriedly got up and smiled. Senior sister, I killed him and helped you vent your anger. Can't you reward me a little? Goodbye. Feng Zihan said coldly, then turned around and left the cave quickly. Looking at Feng Zihan's back, the smile on Qin Feiyang's face gradually disappeared, and his eyes flashed. After Feng Zihan left, Qin Feiyang waved his hand and the cave stone door closed. He then entered the ancient castle. Inside the ancient castle, everyone had woken up from their seclusion, and there was a bright smile on their faces. Not to mention the divine arts and divine artifacts, just the 4 billion soul stones were enough for them to enter the half-step divine monarch realm, and there would be a lot left. Because in total, they only needed 1 to 4 to 5 billion soul stones. I was wondering why you were so generous to give Gao Xiaolong 10 million soul stones, so you were secretly extorting a sum from Feng Zihan. The mermaid princess covered her mouth and giggled. Little girl, why are your words so unpleasant? Qin Feiyang lightly scratched her nose and said unhappily, Is this extortion? It's an equal transaction. Yes. An equal transaction. Thanks to this equal transaction, we don't need to worry about soul stones anymore. The mermaid princess laughed. Qin Feiyang hugged the mermaid princess and chuckled. Look, your husband is so capable, shouldn't you give me a reward? What are you doing? The mermaid princess's face turned red as she scolded. Nothing. Don't worry about us, it's not the first time we've seen it. Zhao Tailai and the others jeered. Qin Rushwang said, Actually, we should get married earlier and add more people to our Qin family. The mermaid princess said helplessly, Sister Rushwang, why are you jeering too? This is a serious matter. Not jeering. Qin Rushwang said. The mermaid princess was helpless. Qin Feiyong coughed dryly and looked at the two of them saying, I say, your seniority is a bit ridiculous. I also want to call her great-grandmother, but she doesn't want to, saying that it makes her seem old. The mermaid princess laughed. She's old. Qin Feiyong pursed his lips. What did you say? Say it again for me to hear. Qin Rushuang was stunned and stared at Qin Feiyong unkindly. Nothing. Nothing. Then from now on, should I also call you big sister? And the husband follows the wife's lead. Since she calls you sister, then I should also call you sister. Qin Feiyong chuckled. How dare you? Qin Rushuang said angrily. Why should I? Qin Feiyong was dissatisfied. Everyone else can but not you. Because you and I are directly related by blood, so you have to call me whatever you want. Qin Rushuang said. All right. All right. It's just a name, as long as you're happy it's fine. Feiyong, what do you plan to do with these 4 divine artifacts and techniques? Tan Tai Li asked. Qin Feiyong lowered his head and looked at the 4 divine artifacts and jade slips on the ground, and fell silent for a moment. The 4 divine artifacts were a black battle axe, a crimson battle sword, a crimson gold halberd, and a golden bronze mirror. A moment later, Qin Feiyong looked at Zhao Tailai and said, Old Zhao, the battle axe is yours. Thank you, young master. Zhao Tailai was pleasantly surprised and quickly went forward to grab the battle axe. Tang Hai, you. Qin Feiyong looked at Tang Hai, but before he could say anything, Tang Hai waved his hand and said, My hell blade is about to evolve into a perfect divine artifact, so I don't need a divine artifact. Just give me a technique later. Okay. Qin Feiyong nodded. The hell blade was the black dagger on Tang Hai's body. Willow Tree, the battle sword is yours. Xueqi, the halberd is yours. Blood Kirin, the bronze mirror is yours. Qin Feiyong said. Thank you. Willow Tree, Xueqi, and the Blood Kirin were also very excited. The white-eyed wolf looked at Zhao Tailai, then at Qin Feiyong and said, Little Qin Zi, where is your brother? How could I forget you? Qin Feiyong rolled his eyes and took out the Sun Destroyer bow. This is for you. What about us? Yu Huang, the Golden Leopard, and the Thunder Leopard asked. Don't rush. There are only a few divine artifacts. How can everyone have a share? Take it slow. I promise that everyone here will have a peak-level divine artifact. Even a legendary divine artifact. Qin Feiyong said. Yu Huang and the other beasts nodded. Qin Feiyong looked at the 4 jade slips and smiled. As for these 4 techniques, you can decide for yourselves. Whoever is most suited to cultivate them will have them. What about you? You don't want anything? The mermaid princess looked at him suspiciously. Qin Feiyong hugged the mermaid princess tightly and smiled. With you by my side, why would I need those things? The mermaid princess blushed. Zhao Tailai shook his head and sighed. Young master, I didn't know you were such a mushy person. Tang Hai said lightly. You don't understand. Young master is a quiet man. Qin Feiyong's face darkened. Was it because he was in a good mood and wanted to be intimate with the mermaid princess? But these guys were making fun of him. Okay, you guys take your time to discuss who the divine artifact belongs to. Fire Lotus. Let's go find Gu Yong. Qin Feiyong let go of the mermaid princess and looked at Fire Lotus. Find Gu Yong? Fire Lotus was stunned and looked at Qin Feiyong in confusion. Gu Yong was worthless. Why would they go find him? Think about it carefully. Is Gu Yong's head really worth 1 billion soul stones? Qin Feiyong said, his eyes shining. Chapter 2039. It's definitely not worth it. 1 billion divine crystals is probably more like it. Fire Lotus shook her head without hesitation. That's right, since he's not worth this price. Then why did Feng Zihan use 1 billion soul stones to buy Gu Yong's whereabouts? Qin Feiyong said. Fire Lotus said, didn't Feng Zihan also say that she wants to kill this traitor? If it's just because Gu Yong betrayed them, I don't think Feng Zihan would offer such a high price. Because even if she only gave me 10 million soul stones, I would still tell her Gu Yong's whereabouts. After all, he has no value. Why not exchange for 10 million soul stones? But she took out 1 billion at once. This is worth thinking about. And before, when she heard me say that Gu Yong was killed by me, I found that Feng Zihan had a feeling of relief. I feel that this matter is not as simple as it seems on the surface. Qin Feiyang thought. Fire Lotus was startled and said in surprise, could it be that Gu Yong has something on Feng Zihan?
I think so too.
Qin Feiyang nodded. If that's the case, then we have to find him quickly, in case any accidents happen. Fire Lotus said.
Yes.
Qin Feiyang nodded, and then brought Fire Lotus to the cave residence. Fire Lotus asked, can you find him?
Of course.
But I'm too lazy to find him. Let him come find me. Qin Feiyang smiled through the slave seal. He sensed Gu Yong's location, and said in his mind, Gu Yong, come to the north of Sky Dragon City to see me immediately. In the middle of the night, Gu Yong was naturally resting. But suddenly, Qin Feiyang's voice sounded in his mind. He sat up with a start, his face full of surprise. Why would there be Zhang Haotian's voice? Was he having a nightmare? What's wrong? The woman beside him was also awakened, and looked suspiciously at Gu Yong. Gu Yong shook his head. Maybe I've been too tired recently, so I'm hallucinating. It's nothing. This is not an illusion. After 100 breaths, if I don't see you outside the northern city gate, I will tell Feng Yuan your whereabouts. Qin Feiyang's voice sounded again. Gu Yong was stunned. Even though he was so far away from the Nine Heaven Palace, he was still able to transmit his voice directly into his mind? Furthermore, from what he said, he could even sense his location. What kind of secret technique was this? This was too heaven-defying. Seeing Gu Yong's expression, the woman sat up and asked again, are you really okay?
It's okay, it's okay. Don't worry.
Gu Yong returned to his senses and smiled at the woman. It was obvious that he loved his wife very much. The woman looked at him in confusion and asked, then why are you so surprised?
Don't ask. Gu Yong smiled.
He lowered his head and muttered to himself for a while. Then, he lifted the quilt and quickly put on his clothes. He looked at the woman and said, I have something to do.
Don't worry.
Rest well.
Be careful.
The woman warned.
I will.
Gu Yong nodded. He took out an illusory pill from his universe ring and transformed into an old man. He then activated the altar and rushed towards Sky Dragon City. His current location could be said to be extremely far away from Sky Dragon City. He would need to activate at least a dozen altars to reach there. At the same time, Qin Feiyang also brought Fire Lotus and quickly left the Nine Heaven Palace. He activated an altar and descended outside the northern city gate. In the night, there was not a single person in the plains. It was extremely quiet. Qin Feiyang and Fire Lotus stood under a large tree outside the plains. They blended into the darkness and looked at the northern city gate from afar. 100 breaths had not passed yet. Suddenly, a black figure appeared in the sky above the plains. It was Gu Yong. He looked around, his face full of vigilance. Although Gu Yong had changed his appearance, but with the slave seal, he could sense Gu Yong's location. Therefore, Qin Feiyang immediately knew that it was him. Qin Feiyang thought to himself, turn around and walk straight out of the plains. Gu Yong immediately turned and flew towards where Qin Feiyang and Fire Lotus were. A few breaths later, Gu Yong left the plains. Qin Feiyang smiled. Here. Gu Yong looked towards the direction of the voice. Helplessness flashed in his eyes as he walked towards Qin Feiyang. Fire Lotus mocked. You hid so far away and we still found you. Do you feel depressed? Gu Yong looked at Fire Lotus and then at Qin Feiyang. He suddenly knelt on the ground and begged, I really don't want to go back to the Nine Heaven Palace. Please let me go. Don't be like this. Get up and talk. Qin Feiyang raised his hand and smiled. But the more it was like this, the more Gu Yong panicked. What are you afraid of? I am not here for you to go back to the Nine Heaven Palace. Qin Feiyang was helpless. You aren't? Gu Yong was stunned for a moment before he sighed in relief. He stood up and asked, then why are you looking for me?
Do you know?
Earlier, Feng Zihan came to me with 1 billion soul stones and told me to tell her your whereabouts. Qin Feiyang said.
What?
Gu Yong's face paled as he hurriedly asked, then did you tell her?
If I had told her, then I wouldn't be the one looking for you. She would be the one looking for you. Qin Feiyong smiled. Thank you. Gu Yong was moved to tears. No. 1 billion soul stones, such a large sum, anyone would be moved. But this person in front of him didn't want it? Could it be that he has a bigger scheme? Qin Feiyong patted Gu Yong's shoulder and smiled. Don't worry, I don't have a scheme. Even if I did, it wouldn't be against you. Gu Yong was stunned and frowned. You can really peek into my thoughts? Of course. That's what it is. Why would I lie to you? Qin Feiyong said. Gu Yong asked suspiciously. Then why did you call me here? Let's change places and talk slowly. Qin Feiyong waved his hand and brought Fire Lotus and Gu Yong to the courtyard in the center of the Black Tortoise Realm's herb field. Sit. Qin Feiyong pointed to the stone bench and smiled. Gu Yong sat down nervously. Don't be so nervous. Qin Feiyong comforted him and said, according to my guess, this Feng Zihan spent 1 billion soul stones to buy information about you. It shouldn't be as simple as you betraying them. Gu Yong's eyes trembled slightly when he heard this. Then he lowered his head and remained silent. Qin Feiyong was not in a hurry. He took out the set of Proud of the Blue Sea and asked Fire Lotus to bring some water over. Then he slowly brewed tea. Soon, the fragrance of tea filled the air. Qin Feiyong poured a cup and pushed it in front of Gu Yong. Thank you. Gu Yong thanked him and grabbed the teacup. He did not drink, lowered his head and continued to remain silent. Qin Feiyong picked up the teacup and took a sip. He looked at Fire Lotus and smiled. Girl, this tea is rare. It was given to me by an old man. He spent a lot of effort to cultivate this tea. You should try it. Fire Lotus poured a cup and tasted it curiously. She said in surprise. There is actually a medicinal fragrance? That old man planted the tea tree in the herb field, so it has a medicinal fragrance. Qin Feiyong smiled. The old man he was talking about was the pavilion master of the Forgotten Continents Trading Pavilion. I see. Fire Lotus nodded in realization. After Qin Feiyong drank a few cups, he looked at Gu Yong and said, after thinking for so long, you still haven't decided? Gu Yong sighed deeply. He was not in the mood to drink tea. He put down the teacup and looked up at Qin Feiyong, saying, they probably want to silence us. Silence us? Qin Feiyong and Fire Lotus looked at each other. Was there really something fishy about this? Gu Yong said, after following Feng Yuan for so many years, he trusted me a lot, so I know everything he did before. What did he do before? Qin Feiyong was curious. Gu Yong was a little hesitant. Qin Feiyong smiled. Drink a cup of tea and moisten your throat. Tell me slowly. Gu Yong glanced at Qin Feiyong, picked up the teacup, and took a sip. Then he made up his mind and said, I know if I don't tell you today, you won't let me go. Qin Feiyong said, it's good that you know. Feng Yuan has done a lot of despicable things in the resource hall these years. For example, he used his authority to deceive his superiors and subordinates, eliminate dissidents, and take bribes and bend the law to fill his own pockets. Moreover, he also bribed people from the law enforcement hall behind the scenes, preparing to take away Shangguan Fenglan's power and replace her with Feng Wenhai. You can say that if all the things he did in the past are exposed, he will definitely die. Gu Yong said. Sure enough, there's something. Qin Feiyong muttered. Let's talk about soul stones. The inner sect is different from the outer sect. Outer sect disciples receive soul stones at the duty hall. Inner sect disciples go directly to the resource hall to receive them. And Feng Yuan used his authority to give Feng Zihan 5 million soul stones every month. Even for Feng Zijuan, he gave her 500,000 soul stones every month. Gu Yong said. What? 5 million? Qin Feiyong was dumbfounded. That's a whole 5 times more. Because Feng Zihan himself received 1 million soul stones every month. And Feng Zihan's deity techniques and deity artifacts were basically taken out by Feng Yuan from the resource hall's treasury and given to her. Gu Yong said. This is more than just bribery and bending the law. He simply treats the resource hall as his own home. Fire Lotus said angrily. This is normal. As the hall master of the resource hall, who wouldn't be tempted to look at those treasures all day long? Qin Feiyong shook his head with a smile.
looked at Gu Yong and asked, "Other than these, is there anything else special?" "Something special?" Gu Yong was stunned. Qin Feiyong said, "That is, the kind that is enough to kill him instantly." Gu Yong lowered his head and pondered. Fire Lotus said, "Brother, to be so greedy and want to make Shangguan Fenglan a mere figurehead, this is enough to kill him." "I know. But when it comes to information, the more, the better," Qin Feiyong said with a smile. A moment later, Gu Yong's eyes suddenly lit up. He looked up at Qin Feiyong and said, "There is one thing that should be special." "What is it?" Qin Feiyong was looking forward to it. Gu Yong said, "The Great Elder's son, the previous hallmaster of the resource hall, was assassinated by Feng Yuan." "What?" Qin Feiyong was dumbfounded. Fire Lotus was also shocked. Feng Yuan assassinated the Great Elder's son? If this really happened, then it couldn't be described as special. It should be described as shocking. Chapter 2040. You might not know, but Feng Yuan used to be a follower of the First Elder's son. But he was very calculative. He used the First Elder's son to climb up step by step. In the end, he set his sights on the throne of the Resource Hall Master. But since the other party was the First Elder's son, he didn't dare to act rashly. So, he waited patiently and slowly looked for an opportunity. Then one day, the First Elder's son received news that a Class 9 soul line had been born in the Sky Dragon Sea. There are only 3 Class 9 soul lines in Nine Heaven Palace, so the First Elder's son took some people and went to the Sky Dragon Sea. Among them was Feng Yuan. Gu Yong said. Qin Feiyong asked, "Is there really a Class 9 soul line?" "There is." However, the birth of this Class 9 soul line also attracted the attention of the Treasure Hall and other factions. At that time, the various factions had a bloody battle. The Treasure Hall sent the current Vice Hall Master. He was very strong and directly injured the First Elder's son. But because of the First Elder's face, he didn't kill him. But Feng Yuan took the opportunity to kill the First Elder's son while he was recuperating. His companions were all killed by him to keep their mouths shut. At that time, this matter even caused a huge commotion in the northern region. Gu Yong said, "That's for sure. After all, the other party was the First Elder's son." Then what did Feng Yuan say to the First Elder when he returned? Qin Feiyong asked. He told the First Elder that he was attacked by sea beasts on the way back. He blamed the Treasure Hall's Vice Hall Master, saying that if the Vice Hall Master hadn't injured his son, he wouldn't have died in the Sky Dragon Sea. Because of this matter, the First Elder personally went to the Treasure Hall. If the Treasure Hall Master hadn't stopped him, the Vice Hall Master would have died at the First Elder's hands. Gu Yong said. Fire Lotus smiled bitterly. He's probably the only one who dares to go to the Treasure Hall. Qin Feiyong said, "This shows how terrifying this old man's strength is." The First Elder's strength cannot be described with the word, terrifying. According to Feng Yuan, if the First Elder were to go all out, there would not be more than 5 people in the entire northern region who could fight against him. Gu Yong said, "Terrifying, truly terrifying." Then, did Feng Yuan naturally become the Hall Master of the Resource Hall? Qin Feiyong asked. Yes. Because Feng Yuan has been following the First Elder's son, he is more familiar with the situation in the Resource Hall than anyone else. Furthermore, he wasn't weak at that time, so the Great Elder and the Vice Palace Master discussed and let him take up the post. Gu Yong said. Qin Feiyong asked, "How many years ago did this happen?" Gu Yong thought for a moment and said, "It should be more than 10,000 years ago. Anyway, it's been a long time." Then how do you know so clearly? At that time, you hadn't followed Feng Yuan yet, right? Qin Feiyong said. Indeed, I didn't. But this was told to me by Feng Yuan himself. It's definitely true. Gu Yong said solemnly. Fire Lotus said in surprise. Feng Yuan even told you such an important thing? He said it once when he drank too much. Of course. It's also because of his trust in me. You can say that in terms of trust, even his own son, Feng Wenhai, can't compare to me. Gu Yong said proudly. Not bad. Qin Feiyong said with a smile. It was not difficult to gain a person's trust. However, it wasn't easy for someone to trust him so much. It meant that Gu Yong was indeed very smart. Fire Lotus shook her head and said, "To be honest, I feel a little sorry for Feng Yuan now."
Why?
Qin Feiyong and Gu Yong looked at her suspiciously. Fire Lotus looked at Qin Feiyong and said, "Think about it, Feng Yuan trusted him so much, but he betrayed Feng Yuan. Don't you think such a person is hateful?"
Heard about it.
Gu Yong looked rather embarrassed. Qin Feiyong couldn't help but want to laugh. He looked at Gu Yong and said, "Don't mind her. This girl is just telling the truth."
"I won't."
Gu Yong waved his hand. But then his expression froze. He originally thought that Qin Feiyong was comforting him. But after thinking about it carefully, it didn't seem to be the case. He was just telling the truth. Was this considered comforting him? Was there a need to go overboard? Besides, if it weren't for you, would I have betrayed Feng Yuan? But he didn't dare to say these words. Qin Feiyong coughed and asked, "Besides you, who else knows about this?"
Feng Wenhai and Yin Hui know.
But the descendants, such as Feng Zihan and Feng Zijuan, know nothing.
Gu Yong said.
Qin Feiyong said, "Is the deputy pavilion master of the treasure pavilion still around?"
Yes.
Gu Yong nodded and said, "I heard that he's in seclusion." Qin Feiyong pondered for a while and said with a smile, "It seems that keeping you alive is the right choice. All right, you go back first. I'll look for you if I need anything in the future."
"Don't look for me, okay?"
"I'll tell you another secret,"
Gu Yong said with a bitter face.
Qin Feiyong was stunned and asked curiously, "What secret?"
"Feng Yuan has an account book in his hands.
All the things he has embezzled over the years are recorded in this account book. As long as you can get this account book, it's equivalent to holding his life in your hands,"
Gu Yong said.
Qin Feiyong's eyes lit up and he asked, "Where is this account book?" Gu Yong said, "It's in his interspatial ring. He carries it with him everywhere and never leaves his side."
"Never leaves his side?"
Qin Feiyong frowned. This was a little difficult. Gu Yong said, "Look, I've already told you such an important thing.
Can't you let me go?"
"Don't worry. If there's nothing particularly important, I won't disturb you."
Qin Feiyong smiled comfortingly.
Gu Yong sighed helplessly. "Anyway, you don't intend to let me go. As long as you behave yourself, I guarantee that you'll live a good life. All right, you can go back." Qin Feiyong waved his hand and sent Gu Yong out. Fire Lotus said suspiciously, "Qin Dage, taking bribes and bending the law is a serious crime. Why does Feng Yuan keep an account book?" "Because he has to reconcile the accounts. Although he's in charge of the resource hall, the first elder will definitely check the accounts at any time. If he doesn't record it in the account book, then he won't know how to reconcile the accounts. After all, if he's too greedy, sometimes even he will forget where the money he took went."
Qin Feiyong said.
"In other words, the account book he showed the first elder is the public account, while the one in his hand is the hidden account,"
Fire Lotus said.
"Yes." Qin Feiyong nodded and smiled. "It seems like I have to go to the resource hall. Only by entering the resource hall would he be able to get close to Feng Yuan. Only by getting close to him would he have a chance to obtain the account book. You know that there's a tiger in the mountain, but you still want to go there." Fire Lotus rolled her eyes at Huang Xiaolong.
"Isn't there another saying?
Nothing ventured, nothing gained." Qin Feiyong smiled and left the Black Tortoise world with Fire Lotus. After returning to the Nine Heavens Palace, he went to the ancient castle with Fire Lotus to cultivate in seclusion. Chapter 2041. After a period of time, it finally calmed down. No one came to find trouble with Qin Feiyong anymore. But outside, the matter of Feng Wenhai framing Qin Feiyong did not die down. Everyone would often discuss this matter after dinner. The Feng family's reputation was ruined and everyone despised them. Qin Feiyong became the idol of many young people. Not only did he have courage, but he also had brains. This was especially true for many young girls. When the name Qin Feiyong was mentioned, their eyes couldn't help but shine. Time passed quickly. More than a month passed. Boom! Inside the ancient castle, a terrifying aura appeared. This aura had already reached the level of a perfect war god. The owner of this aura was Qin Feiyang. Swish! He opened his eyes and 2 rays of divine light shot out. It was indeed different with the Soul Stone. Of course. With the Soul Stone and without the ancient castle, it would not be so fast. You broke through. Fire Lotus stood at the side and smiled at Qin Feiyang. Yes. Qin Feiyang nodded and restrained his aura. He looked up and sized up Fire Lotus. The aura emitted by the Fire Lotus was also a level stronger than before. Obviously. She had also reached the level of perfect war god. Fire Lotus shook her head and said, I really don't like to cultivate. It's too boring sitting here all day. Qin Feiyang was stunned. He stood up and knocked Fire Lotus's head hard. Do you know how many people want to cultivate in the ancient castle? You're good, you're bored. You really don't know how lucky you are. Fire Lotus rubbed her head and laughed. Qin Feiyang smiled helplessly and took out the image crystal. Bas. Not long later, a figure appeared. It was Gao Xiaolong. Gao Xiaolong's aura had also reached the level of a perfect war god. Qin Feiyang said in surprise, You've already broken through? Yes. This is all thanks to the Soul Stone Brother Jiang gave me. I could have broken through to perfect war god long ago, but I didn't have the Soul Stone and could only rely on myself. Gao Xiaolong sighed helplessly. Qin Feiyang smiled and asked, How's the situation outside recently? Nothing much. Feng Yuan, Feng Zihan, and Feng Zijuan are all very honest. It's just that Gong Zifeng has some problems. Gao Xiaolong frowned. What is it? Qin Feiyang was suspicious. Gao Xiaolong went on, Last time at the square he pleaded for Feng Wenhai, do you still remember? Qin Feiyang nodded. Because of this, Feng Yuan's attitude towards him finally changed. But good times don't last. Back then, Feng Yuan asked young Master Feng if there was anything he wanted. What he meant was that he was prepared to nurture him. But can you guess how Gongzi Feng answered? He told Feng Yuan that he didn't need anything. He just wanted to give his mother a status. This sentence angered Feng Yuan again, and he chased him out of the house on the spot. Since then, he has been staying in the restaurant all day. I tried to persuade him, but it was useless. It was as if he had no soul. Gao Xiaolong shook his head, sympathy written all over his face. Qin Feiyang was silent for a long time when he heard this. I thought he was a smart person, but it seems like I overestimated him. Gao Xiaolong asked, You also think that he's wrong? Of course he's wrong. Feng Wenhai's matter has already ruined the Feng family's reputation. If he reveals his mother's identity at this time, won't the Feng family be even more embarrassed? Anyone with half a brain wouldn't do such a stupid thing. Qin Feiyang said. I think so too, and I told him the same thing. But now, other than hatred, he won't listen to anything. Gao Xiaolong said. Forget it. There's no need to help such a stupid person. Qin Feiyang waved his hand. If Gongzi Feng could endure for a bit and wait for this matter to pass, wait for Feng Yuan to calm down, and then mention to Feng Yuan about clearing his mother's name, then it would definitely be a different situation. Gao Xiaolong sighed. Actually, he's quite pitiful. There are too many pitiful people in this world. One more won't make a difference. Qin Feiyang said indifferently. That's true. Gao Xiaolong nodded with a smile. In fact, he knew that Qin Feiyang was exasperated at Gong Zifeng's failure to live up to his expectations. Qin Feiyang asked, How's your sister recently? Not bad. I gave her half of the 10 million soul stones you gave me, and she's in seclusion now. Gao Xiaolong smiled. Qin Feiyang praised, Good, she doesn't forget her family, very good. Now, she only has me as her brother. If I don't take care of her, who will? Gao Xiaolong sighed. Qin Feiyang said, I admire you for this. Gao Xiaolong scratched his head, feeling a little embarrassed. Suddenly, Gao Xiaolong seemed to have thought of something, and his brows furrowed slightly. He looked at Qin Feiyang and said, Recently, something big happened in the treasure pavilion. Qin Feiyang asked, What's the matter? Gao Xiaolong said, I remember that half a month ago, the treasure pavilion auctioned off a pill called 9 Revolutions Dragon Blood Pill. 9 Revolutions Dragon Blood Pill. Qin Feiyang's eyes narrowed. This Mu Tianyang really acted fast. Last time, it was Mu Qing who acted on her own, But this time, it was definitely Mu Tianyang who acted personally. Moreover, it was 100% done with soul stones. Because Mu Tianyang was different from Mu Qing, he wouldn't waste such a good opportunity to earn soul stones. All right. If there's any situation in the future, remember to inform me at once. Qin Feiyong looked at Gao Xiaolong and smiled. Okay. Gao Xiaolong nodded. Qin Feiyong turned off the image crystal and fell into deep thought. Fire Lotus said, Qin Dage, we can't let Mu Tianyang and the Treasure Pavilion continue to cooperate like this. But the Treasure Pavilion has banned me. I can't stop them. Qin Feiyong felt helpless. We can go look for Shangguan Fenglan. She's Shangguan Qiu's sister. Shangguan Qiu will definitely listen to her. Fire Lotus laughed. Forget it. I don't want to face this woman at all. Qin Feiyong waved his hand, smiling. Let's go. I haven't been to the Treasure Pavilion since I was banned. You also don't want to cultivate, right? Let's go take a look at the Treasure Pavilion today. Go now. Aren't you looking for trouble? I don't want to go. Fire Lotus shook her head. Girl, do you really think I don't have a way to deal with that Shangguan Qiu? Qin Feiyong chuckled. What way? Fire Lotus was stunned as she looked at Qin Feiyong and asked. You'll know in a while. Qin Feiyong smiled, took Fire Lotus and left the Black Tortoise realm, then walked out of the cave and flew towards the sky stairway. Jiang Haotian, Jiang Fire Lotus, wait up. Suddenly, a voice rang out. Qin Feiyong and Fire Lotus stopped and turned to look, only to see Chengli flying towards them. Both of them were stunned. Why was Chengli looking for them? Chengli flew over and asked suspiciously, Where are you guys going? I have something to do in Sky Dragon City. May I ask what's the matter, Elder? Qin Feiyong asked. It's like this. The higher-ups have decided to let the two of you, Jiang Rushuang and Hua Yi, enter the inner sect. I'm here to inform you. Chengli laughed. Enter the inner sect? Qin Feiyong was stunned. Actually, you guys were originally inner sect disciples, but because you were framed by Feng Wenhai, you were demoted to the outer sect. Now that the truth is out, it's only right for you to return to the inner sect. Chengli said. What about the reward for first place? Since we were wronged, the reward for first place should be returned to us. Fire Lotus said. I'm afraid. Chengli was in a difficult position. Elder Cheng. To be honest, we're already used to the life of the outer sect and don't want to go to the inner sect yet. Why don't you go back and let us stay in the outer sect? Qin Feiyong said. Don't want to go to the inner sect? The corner of Cheng Li's mouth twitched. If you want the reward for first place back, just say it. Why find such an excuse? The reward for first place has already been given to Mu Tianyang. It's impossible to return it to you. If you insist on not going, I won't force you, but don't regret it. 3 days later, the resource hall will be recruiting. At that time, only inner sect disciples are qualified to sign up. Chengli said. Resource hall is recruiting? Qin Feiyong and Fire Lotus looked at each other. Yes. The treatment in the resource hall is even better than the inner sect. Even I want to join. Chengli smiled. Are you sure only inner sect disciples can sign up? Elder, don't try to trick us. Qin Feiyong said. Jiang Haotian, you're being rude. In any case, I am an elder. Why would I lie to disciples like you? Chengli said angrily. Don't be angry. Don't be angry. Disciple was just saying it casually. Qin Feiyong quickly apologized. Actually, Chengli sighed and smiled. You're now a famous person in Nine Heaven Palace. To be honest, I don't want you to go to the inner sect, but this is an order from the higher-ups. No one can go against it. Prepare to go to the inner sect. Okay. After we return from Sky Dragon City, we'll go to the inner sect. Qin Feiyong nodded. Okay then. When the time comes, help me tell Jiang Rushuang and Hua Yi, so I don't have to make this trip again. Chengli said. Okay. Qin Feiyong nodded and said. After Chengli left, Fire Lotus said suspiciously, Why do I feel that this person is trying to curry favor? Feng Wenhai has already fallen, so he has no one to rely on. Naturally, he wants to curry favor. These are all small fries. There's no need to take them seriously. Let's go. Qin Feiyong smiled, turned around, and tore through the sky like a bolt of lightning. Sky Dragon City. Treasure Pavilion. It's Zhang Haotian. And his sister, Zhang Fire Lotus. This Zhang Haotian, how could he be a perfect war god? I remember that during the exam, he was only a beginner war god. How could he be so fast? The moment Qin Feiyong and Fire Lotus appeared, they caused a commotion. A group of people surrounded them as if they were long-lost relatives. Even Qin Feiyong couldn't withstand their enthusiasm. He quickly pulled Fire Lotus and walked towards the entrance of the treasure pavilion. In front of the treasure pavilion, 2 guards stood straight. Seeing Qin Feiyong and Fire Lotus walk over, they looked at each other and stepped in front of the entrance. What's the meaning of this? Qin Feiyong raised his eyebrows. Young Master Jiang, we're just following orders. Please don't make things difficult for us. The 2 cupped their hands and said with an apologetic expression. Chapter 2042. Qin Feiyong frowned. Did I make things difficult for you? You're the ones making things difficult for me. This. The 2 of them looked at each other, not knowing how to respond. What do you mean? The treasure pavilion is open for business. Why are you stopping Zhang Haotian and his sister? What do you mean by following orders? Whose orders are these? The surrounding crowd began to question them. Qin Feiyong had not been to the treasure pavilion since he was banned, so no one knew about it yet. Yes. Why are you stopping us? Did I offend you? Qin Feiyong pretended to be confused. No. The 2 guards quickly waved their hands, feeling bitter. If it were in the past, they would have been fearless. However, the situation was different now. Qin Feiyong had won the hearts of the people in Sky Dragon City. If the fact that they banned Qin Feiyong was exposed, the treasure pavilion might drown in everyone's spittle. No. Then I'm puzzled. If I didn't offend you, why can't I enter the treasure pavilion? Don't tell me the treasure pavilion banned me. Qin Feiyong said. What? Banned? Why did they ban you? The crowd looked at Qin Feiyong in surprise. I don't know either. I don't think I've done anything wrong to the treasure pavilion. But if they didn't ban me, why can't they let me in? Qin Feiyong said innocently. Shangguanqiu, come out. You have to make this clear today. How dare they ban Zhang Haotian? Who gave you the right to do that? Come out. If you don't make it clear today, we won't come to the treasure pavilion in the future. The crowd roared with righteous indignation. Could it be that some people in the treasure pavilion were bribed by Feng Wenhai? Fire Lotus said suddenly. What? Bribed by Feng Wenhai? Preposterous. Preposterous. The dignified treasure pavilion is actually colluding with such shameless people. Shangguanqiu, stop hiding. Come out and give us an explanation. Otherwise, we will chase your treasure pavilion out of Heavenly Dragon City. The crowd roared furiously. It's over. This is going to be big. The 2 guards were burning with anxiety. Water can carry a boat, but it can also capsize a boat. The treasure pavilion was able to stand tall in the northern region because of its reputation and the support of the common people. If they offended everyone, then the treasure pavilion would no longer be able to maintain a foothold in the northern region. Suddenly, surrounded by a group of staff members, Shangguanqiu walked out of the treasure pavilion and stood at the entrance with a gloomy face. Shangguanqiu, speak clearly. Why did you ban Zhang Haotian? Was he bribed by Feng Wenhai? The crowd roared. I'd like to see how you're going to handle this. Qin Feiyong mumbled. Shangguanqiu glanced at the crowd and raised his hand. Everyone, please be quiet. The crowd fell silent and waited for him to continue. The treasure pavilion did not ban Zhang Haotian. It's just that we were entertaining an important guest and did not want to be disturbed, so we temporarily blocked Zhang Haotian outside. Shangguanqiu smiled. That's strange. What does your entertaining of an important guest have to do with me entering the treasure pavilion? I'm not here to look for you. Qin Feiyong frowned. That's right. He's not here to look for you, and he won't interfere with your entertaining of an important guest. Why did you block him outside?
Even if you want to find an excuse, shouldn't you at least find a better one?
The crowd said angrily.
Shangguanqiu was furious. He glared at Qin Feiyong and smiled at the crowd. I didn't think it through. I hope everyone can forgive me.
No, no, no.
With Steward Shangguan's intelligence and ability, how could he not think it through? There must be another reason. Qin Feiyong said.
Fire Lotus also said, if you can't even think about this, then what ability do you have to be the steward of the treasure pavilion?
Shangguanqiu was going crazy.
He said telepathically, don't push your luck.
Push my luck?
Qin Feiyong smiled inwardly and turned his head to look at the crowd behind him. He said angrily, everyone, just now, this manager actually sent me a voice transmission to warn me not to push my luck. I really don't know what I've done to the treasure pavilion.
How is this pushing my luck? Shangguanqiu was furious. He looked at Qin Feiyong fiercely, as if he wanted to skin him alive.
That's too much. Even if he's on death row, he should announce his crime before he's executed.
Shangguanqiu, you've gone too far. You like to ban people so much, right? Then ban us too.
Even if you don't ban me, I won't come to the treasure pavilion anymore. This place makes me sick. It's disgusting. Everyone's faces were full of disdain. It's not like this, it's not like this. Shangguanqiu was anxious. The situation was getting out of hand. There was no way to end it. If it's not like this, then what is it? You have to give a reasonable explanation. You can't bully people just because the treasure pavilion is powerful.
Qin Feiyong said.
Shangguanqiu said to himself, can you stop talking? I'm begging you. You're the steward of the treasure pavilion, the disciple of the pavilion leader, and the sister of the tribunal leader.
How can I let you beg me?
But I just don't feel good. My sister, Fire Lotus, and my 2 subordinates were all kicked out by you.
Qin Feiyong telepathically said. Can I apologize to you?
If not, I'll compensate you for your loss.
I just beg you to stop making trouble.
Shangguanqiu said helplessly.
Then do something. Do you need me to teach you how to apologize?
Qin Feiyong sneered. Shangguanqiu gritted his teeth and glared at Qin Feiyong. He glanced at the crowd and said with a smile, everyone, it's my fault for not thinking things through.
I apologize to Zhang Haotian and Zhang Hulian right now. After that,
Shangguanqiu looked at Qin Feiyong and Zhang Haotian, bowed and said, I'm really sorry.
Please forgive me.
This, Qin Feiyong hesitated. He looked at the crowd behind him and asked, everyone, what do you think we should do?
We'll do whatever you say. Anyway, we'll support you.
Everyone shouted. Thank you for your love and respect. I, Zhang Haotian, deserve this. Please accept my bow. Qin Feiyong bowed and said, Brother Zhang, you're welcome. We're on the side of justice. We can't bend to evil forces like the treasure pavilion. Everyone laughed. Evil forces? Shangguanqiu's mouth twitched. Thank you, thank you. Actually, this is just a small matter. Since Shangguanqiu has apologized, let's be generous and forgive him. Qin Feiyong smiled and said, Brother Zhang's magnanimity is well deserved. I'm impressed. The crowd sighed and looked at him with admiration. You're flattering me. After all, humans are not saints. Who can be faultless? Qin Feiyong waved his hand and said with a smile. Seeing Qin Feiyong's humble attitude in front of the crowd, Shangguanqiu was about to go crazy. He said to himself, Are you done? Qin Feiyong turned and looked at Shangguanqiu with evil intentions. Shangguanqiu's heart skipped a beat. His attitude suddenly changed. He walked to Qin Feiyong and said with a smile, Young Master Zhang, it's too noisy outside. Let's go to the VIP room and talk. Qin Feiyong was stunned. He asked seriously, Is it appropriate for a nobody like me to go to your VIP room? Of course, of course. In the treasure pavilion, there's no difference in status. Once you enter the treasure pavilion, you're our distinguished guest. Shangguanqiu said with a flattering smile. Is that so? Qin Feiyong did not believe him. Of course, of course. Please come in. Miss Fire Lotus, please come in too. Shangguanqiu nodded and pushed the 2 of them into the treasure pavilion. Brother Jiang, I've heard a lot about you. Brother Jiang, can we have a few drinks together? I've admired you for a long time. The guests in the treasure pavilion were also very enthusiastic. Thank you, thank you. If there's a chance, I'll treat everyone to a drink. Qin Feiyong also bowed to them one by one. Shangguanqiu snorted secretly. I didn't expect you to be so popular now. This is called the unpredictable world. It also proves a principle. Don't underestimate anyone. Steward, you're right. Qin Feiyong snickered secretly. You're so proud of yourself. Shangguanqiu said disdainfully in his heart. He led Qin Feiyong and Li Mu straight to the third floor and entered a VIP room. Take a seat first. I'll come to see you after I send that distinguished guest away. Shangguanqiu said coldly. He turned and walked directly to the VIP room next to him. Qin Dage, you've made her so obedient just like that. You're really something. Fire Lotus smiled in admiration. This is just a small matter. Qin Feiyong waved his hand and smiled. He looked at the VIP room next to him and murmured, Who's in that VIP room? Is it important who it is? Fire Lotus was puzzled. If it's someone else, it's not important. But if it's Mu Tianyang or Mu Qing, it'll be interesting. Let's go and have a look. Qin Feiyong called out and quietly walked to the door of the VIP room. He pressed his ear against the door and listened carefully. Is it Zhang Haotian? Other than him, who else can make such a big scene? This guy is not easy to deal with. You have to be careful. I know. This is the payment for the last batch of 9 transformation dragon blood elixirs. You can count it. Haha, we've worked together for so long. There's no need for that. A familiar conversation entered Qin Feiyong's ears. It's really Mu Qing? Qin Feiyong was shocked. He kicked the door open and saw Shangguanqiu and Mu Qing sitting opposite each other in front of the tea table. Mu Qing was holding a cosmos bag in her hand. Mu Qing and Shangguanqiu were stunned by the sudden situation. How could there be such a rude person? He didn't even knock on the door and just barged in? Shangguanqiu was angry. He stood up and was about to scold him. But at the same time, Qin Feiyong stepped forward and landed beside the tea table. He snatched the cosmos bag from Mu Qing's hand. Bastard, what are you doing? Mu Qing came to her senses. She looked at the cosmos bag in Qin Feiyong's hand and shouted angrily. You're tuning in to the Xueqi's Martial Arts Saga YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.